everyone, welcome to our bonus episode for this week. It is Listener Questions podcast special.
Yeah, it's a special podcast, and it is also a podcast special, isn't it? Because
it's about the podcast.
It's our 10th anniversary month. I don't know whether we've mentioned that so far. I think we probably have, but we're ringing this out, aren't we? And I think
it's all free content.
It is all free content, and I think that some people might find this quite interesting. So basically, the idea of this episode is we have put out the call to our listeners on our Facebook group and anyone else who wanted to get in touch any other way to ask us questions about the podcast. Just to kind of give us another chance to talk about something that we're jolly proud of that we've been doing for the last decade. Because whenever we... and it's not often we talk to people about doing the podcast, obviously, in real life, but whenever we do, if we've been in Manchester or whatever, and we said, oh yeah, we do a Coronation Street podcast, there's always a load of questions, aren't there? People always want to know all about it.
Yep.
But it's not anything that we usually record, so we thought that we'd bundle it all together in one place and have this as an opportunity to learn more about kind of the background and the making of the podcast. And this is kind of our thoughts about the production of it and all that kind of jazz, really.
This is a FAQ section of our website.
It is absolutely. And so we put out the call, and I think from Facebook we managed about 40 questions or so,
God.
and I've got them all here.
Really?
So usually when we do our listener questions, we do.
Hooray!
We're grateful for the listeners. We usually, when we do our listener questions section, we have like two questions, don't we, that we managed to eke out for about an hour or so. I think this is more of a quick fire kind of question round. Don't know how long it's going to last, but we'll try and cover all of them. Some of them will probably repeat to each other. I'll just copy them all into a text document and we'll see what happens, really. So, we're going to kick things off with a question from Navdeep, who wants to know how we felt about doing our first podcast episode. Gemma,
how did we feel after doing it? I don't remember at all. That's what, when we sat down, I saw the first thing I said to you, and we opened the text document. I literally don't remember. Probably smug.
I know this is. I wanted to put this question first because it makes sense to have something about the first episode first. But it was so long ago, I honestly can't remember. We were just like we didn't know what to expect or anything. We had all our bits and pieces there. We had the phone or the laptop or whatever. No, it was a laptop we were recording on then, wasn't it? And we recorded, and we thought, I don't know how long. We knew that it had to be about half an hour long because with Podbean you could buy various tiers, and it's a bit different now. But what we had allowed us to have about 2 hours of content a month or something. So we knew we were going to have 4 episodes or so a month. So we got about half an hour for a podcast. And
I remember you panicking when there were some times where there were 5 Fridays in a month. You're like, oh no,
how are we going to do that?
Yeah,
that's what we eventually ended up paying for a little bit more web space. But I think once we'd done the episode, it was just a case of hopefully I can get this up and ready and it'll all work. I think the main thing that I was wondering was, is anybody actually going to hear this? How are we going to promote this thing? How are we going to get it out there? And once it is out there, is anybody going to be interested in it? I know it's the sort of thing that I would have been interested in. That's why we did the podcast.
I don't remember how we promoted it.
I think, I just signed up to Twitter about a week before, and I'd never used Twitter for my personal reasons. I just signed up for a Conversation Street account, so I just kind of hope that if I put some tweets out there, then someone would pick it up. I can't remember whether we contacted the Coronation Street blog beforehand or afterwards or whatever. It's so long ago, I don't remember, but fortunately, before long, I know that Tivor from the Coronation Street blog sort of leapt on it, didn't she? And she definitely gave it a bit of really promotion helpful, there. Yeah. And then they kind of picked up from there. But I also remember, I'm pretty sure it was after the first one, we were trying to look to see how many downloads it was getting, and there's kind of a fairly basic stats thing you can get via Podbean. And I think if I remember rightly, we might have been going on a trip up to Coventry to see my dad that weekend, and I remember stopping at a service station and having a look and saying oh, it's got 2 downloads this past hour, amazing, that kind of thing, and hope they come back. So it was really just a case of the unknown, and have we wasted a week doing this? Is it going to turn out into anything different, really? And that all combined with the embarrassment of, is that what my voice sounds like as well, was probably a part of it.
I didn't care at all.
And there was
what
like
my voice sounds
I was
like. I know what it
I was
sounds
probably worried about the sound
like.
quality because it was very dodgy back then, wasn't it? It was, if you kind of go back to listen to episode 1, it's all quite rustly and everything.
One thing I will say though is back in the day, so this is 10 years ago, podcasting was still very, very kind of amateur-y and a bit niche and not at all slick and polished. No celebrities were really doing it.
No.
Not like they are now. Like every celebrity's got their podcast about whatever they socks or whatever. But but you know what I mean. Like we weren't. The bar was not high. I don't think. I don't want to be rude to other people, but it was a bit more indie and a bit more cool. And
I like to think that over the 10 years we've kept that amateurish production value just for traditional sake.
Yeah, we could be better, but we just don't want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're happy with the way that we...
We don't have a studio. We don't wear headphones on our head when we do it. There's an awful lot that people do that we do. But
we don't have one of them machines with buttons on it.
Oh no, we don't have a mixer machine or anything.
What's the point of that?
I don't really know, but I know most podcasts do that. So I don't really get what it's for. It's all too complicated for me.
I'd rather go to Manchester for the week than buy a mixing deck or whatever.
Yeah. So
maybe
anyway,
one day.
That's kind of how we felt after the first one. Really,
if anybody wants to buy us one, we'll use it.
don't put that on me. I don't understand. I have looked into them. I don't know.
Michael's the tech guy. You're the producer, aren't you? I'm just the special guest.
That is absolutely right. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I kind of felt after the first one. Pleased that we'd actually got and done it because we've been talking about it for so long, but also quite nervous that would anybody actually listen to this and return for the following week, because we then had to go on and start making the notes and everything for the next week's worth of podcast, thinking, well, is this gonna go anywhere really? So I hope that answers that question. Gemma, move on to the next question.
Alex wants to know, how long did you think you'd be doing the podcast for when you first started, and how long do you think you will continue doing it?
I definitely don't think we had any kind of time frame in mind.
We didn't think at all, ever. We don't think. That's why we're so successful. I say, don't think, just do.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to say, did you think that we would be going in 10 years? I'd be like, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I'm definitely the sort of person who, once they start something, doesn't like to stop unless there's a very good reason for it. But because, like I said earlier, we were a bit nervous about would anyone actually listen to this, we could have been thinking, well, you know, maybe after a few weeks we'll realise that it's a bit of a dud and we'll stop there.
The only way I can imagine that we stop doing it is if Coronation Street ends or one of us dies.
Yes. Both pleasant thoughts there. But no, there was no end date in mind. And there still isn't really, is there?
No.
It hasn't changed. Just keep on going as long as people want to listen to it, really.
Unless I get really ill, I can't see us not doing it.
Well, no. Well, I wondered whether there'd be any kind of like big life events that might get in the way of doing podcasts or whatever, like divorce or getting a dog, getting a baby, or
getting a baby.
Is that what you do? Lower one baby, please.
I've just found this outside, Michael.
But we've kept on going.
I swear it's not mine. I haven't been secretly pregnant this whole time.
So I think it is a case of long may it continue. Really, also I guess if Coronation Street got so bad that we thought we can't even bear to watch this, it's like a completely different show to how it used to be. We might have to have some serious conversations.
It'd be very difficult because we obviously now have a fondness for it, and I've always approached this from the perspective of kind of, you know, not being rude, and we are rude though, like talking about it as though, because it's perfectly possible somebody involved in whatever it is that we don't like, it might be listening. Sometimes we're very dismissive, but I can't imagine us being able to cope with like truly dire, awful Corrie, knowing that some of the people who made it would be listening, going, "Oh, why are they so mean?"
Yeah, I can't remember what he said on the podcast when we did the trip to Manchester, but when we were talking to Dom, one of the things he said was, "Oh, you didn't like the names that I came up with for Ardy's computer games."
Oh, I know. I felt I wanted to die.
So we totally ripped into those names.
I was like, sorry,
a few years ago.
A bit bad. But he said I didn't play computer games, so I don't really know.
They're probably harder than you think to come up with genuine sounding video game names. But yeah, anybody could be listening.
Can I just say, it's not just. This is the defence. It's not just a case of can you come up with a cool computer game name. It's, will it pass through compliance and will they sign off on it? And does it sound similar to something else that's already been done?
Yes.
And if the answer to that is it's not going to, then you got back to the drawing board. And I challenge anybody to come up with something completely original.
Right, let's go on to our next question. So this is from Pat. Pat's an example of someone who's put lots of questions together in one post. So shall I put all the questions out and then we'll just answer them afterwards? Or
I'll give you a yes and no.
Right, Pat's questions are: number one, had you heard of other fan type podcasts that inspired you to start Coronation Street?
Yes.
Yes is the answer to both of them.
Next.
Next,
go on. What did you
picture as future success when you first started?
Money. Next.
No, that's not true. What are you talking about? What are some of your favourite podcast moments that you remember from the past 10 years? And
getting money.
How in the world do you find the time to do such a great podcast in your spare time?
Money motivates me.
I don't know. I think we've been doing it wrong for the past 10 years, if that's true. We did start the Patreon a few years ago, but I think right at the beginning it was always a case of I never wanted to have adverts or anything in the podcast.
Everybody knows that we've said this before, but maybe only to the patrons, that all the money that we get for the show goes straight back into the show. So it's a good job, really, because this would be costing us a fortune otherwise. Right, so have we heard other fan-type podcasts? Yes, because you used to listen to the Lost podcast.
I used to listen to Lost podcast.
What was it called?
There was one called Jacob is Lost. No, Donald is Lost.
Donald, that's it.
I used to listen to. There was also one.
And it used to go.
No, that was another one. That was Jacob's Cabin that had that theme tune, and that was similar to Conversation Street in that it was just discussing.
Yeah, but he had skits and things.
He had skits and things as well, and the Donald is Lost one, yeah, which I just don't think we'd be able to. I suppose our voices that we do are the closest that we've got to him, but he used to do some
It's too complicated.
But I mean, that was like talking about a 1 hour show once a week,
yeah,
in blocks of however many episodes there were in the series. But there wasn't, as far as I know, there wasn't anything that was comparable to what Conversation Street's turned into, where it's literally there is constantly content, TV content that's being churned out that you have to keep up with.
I don't think there's anything like this. Like a soap podcast. There's nothing else like it, because you can never stop unless you do a podcast about the news and what you thought of the news at 10.
News at 10 cast. I mean, we have since inspired other podcasts, haven't we? There are other soap podcasts now.
It's not like we came up with the idea and everyone copied us.
No, there had been Coronation Street podcasts.
Well, it's also not a difficult thing to come up with an idea of doing a podcast about a soap. So we had only ever heard Lost. I can't remember if we listened to any other ones.
I mean, I have listened to Doctor Who podcasts in the past, but I can't remember whether I don't remember whether it was before or not. It might have been, might not have been.
It was mostly listening to those Lost ones where we were like, oh, we could do this for Corrie.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you picture as future success when you first started? Probably honestly being paid a proper wage to do it, but I think that's never going to happen.
It's not, but I don't think that I ever particularly thought about it.
No, but this isn't saying. Well, the question is, what did you picture as future success? Not how did you imagine the future. It's how would you, the way that this is couched makes me think what I answered is correct.
I just kind of, I think I said this recently on the Patreon episode that we recorded, but when I started, I think it was the Patreon, I don't know. I thought, well, how many people watch Coronation Street now? Oh, it's about 10 million people, and about a tenth of those might want to listen to the podcast. I was like, yeah, we're about to get 1 million.
So you think you're being more humble than I am by saying you want 1 million people to listen to this podcast?
I didn't have a clue. And you can look at how many downloads or views that YouTube videos get and everything, because it's the numbers are all out there. I didn't really know, but I kind of readjusted my expectations quite quickly afterwards.
But YouTube's not our...
No, it's
not. That's
not.
just a bonus. It's 60 per episode. Yeah. That's nowhere near the podcast.
I just wanted there to be something that people would want to listen to, and that we would have people writing in to share their thoughts on the podcast and Coronation Street with us, really. Enough people. I don't think I ever thought, what's going to be success for me is members of the cast listen to it.
See, we're not very goal-orientated, are we?
No. We didn't say in 10 years' time we want to be recording an anniversary podcast in a flat overlooking the Coronation Street studios.
We're not very clever like that. We don't. Like I said earlier, we don't think about it.
No, we didn't. We just kind of launched into it,
and we don't have any plans, and we don't have any goals.
Not anymore.
It's
I'm
like
quite happy with how things are. So, favourite podcast moments that you remember from the past 10 years?
I don't have any particular specific memories, but like just having a laugh. Funny jokes, things that people said that they enjoyed listening to. I think that my favourite moments are when I look online and or in our emails or somebody will say, I really thought this was funny, or you guys made me laugh when, or you made me think about this in a different way.
Yeah, I like it when people say that they're driving down the street or
yeah.
in the
Or
supermarket.
like when I heard this, it made me laugh. That's my
something.
favourite thing. I love that.
But I'm so bad at remembering specific moments
a lot
like
of
that.
the things that are to do with favourite moments are kind of peripheral opportunities that have been generated because of the podcast.
I mean, I'll always go back to being contacted by Sally Ann Matthews in the first 3-4 years of the show, because that was the first contact that we had with anybody on the cast that listened to it, and it wasn't anything that I expected to happen. It was also an actress that we were very, very impressed with at the time, and that felt that was that felt like a really momentous thing that was happening when she got in touch with us, and then it's kind of snowballed a bit from there, really. But other moments, it's the peripheral things, and it's like going to visit the set, seeing some filming done, the trips we've had to Manchester,
having Sal wave at us from the bus,
from the bus at the British Soap Awards,
Joe Parkinson waving at you from the pits.
Oh yes, that was good. That's
really nice when just like having people go, oh, it's you guys.
I think that's right, actually. Yeah, people kind of recognising us.
And people, I really like it when we get people voice messages, and I get to hear everyone's accents and think, oh, wow, it's true that lots of different people do listen to this. And it's also really fascinating when you hear somebody new for the first time. But I think it's really funny how excited we are when somebody from a different country contacts us. But actually, if you think about it, how many English or we get a few Scottish people, don't we?
Yes.
Got a Welsh one. We got Al.
We do.
But like, how many English people write in or like send in a voice message?
I don't think we get as many.
I think it's because this charming, stupid English dick doesn't work on other English people, and they're like, I'm not impressed by your accent. This is what I sound like. You're not clever just because you've got an English accent. Not that Scottish people are impressed by that, of course.
How in the world do you find the time to do such a great podcast in your spare time? For me, it's all about the planning, really. I've got kind of my schedule for this is when I do things. It's a little bit different at the moment because I'm in my school summer holidays, but generally I have to plan out, right? So Saturdays is putting it all together for the week and starting to think, well, what are we going to do for the bonus podcast next week? I'll book in a little bit of time on Sunday mornings if it means getting up a bit earlier to put together my notes for the bonus podcast. And as the week's going on, I'm thinking about the core emoji. Sometimes it's a bit of a pain when I need to put things like that together, but I don't think that you could do it without having some kind of organisation, could you?
How in the world do you find the time to do a great podcast in your spare time? Not having anything else to do.
That helps.
Not having children.
Not having found a kid yet.
I've sacrificed my childbearing years to this podcast, everybody. I
hope everyone's appreciative of that. But we do have a cat. We born a cat.
I didn't birth the cat.
She's sitting on my lap right now.
Yeah, it's basically all Michael, and I think being a teacher makes you crazy, and you just don't know how to not do work.
I think that's part of it.
You went straight from this is your problem. You went straight from school when at the end of school, when you're doing your exams, you're in like work mode. There's no way around it. You've got to work to get your exams, and you just went straight from there, and you've never stopped. I don't know what would happen to you if you stopped. I think you'd die.
I think I might do.
You're one of these people that would retire and just die the next day.
I still do have time for my other passions in life, like video gaming. I managed to fit that in. I think it's just having a kind of a timetable in my head and keeping every week
very dedicated.
Relatively the same. Like, it's not like, oh, this week we're going to do this kind of thing and then the next week we're going to shake it up and make it very different. I mean, the podcast has certainly evolved over the decade.
We hate and fear change.
But it's a regular kind of schedule, so things are nothing's going to come out too far left field, really.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you very much. Right, over to you, Gemma. Archie, isn't that? He's got a load of questions as well.
Since doing the podcast, what's been your favourite and then least favourite period of the show to document?
Let's just go through. I mean,
Pat Phelan was my favourite era.
But by far, I think we're both going to say the same with that.
Least favourite period.
I think least favourite period's a difficult one because, I mean, I think...
Anything, right, when it was very Gemma-centric and then she was becoming very boring and then... She had the quads and Chesney and Gemma was front and centre, and I'm really sorry to say that because I think they're both like great actors. I really have liked the characters previously. I just think they're a very bad
they are
combination.
both characters.
And one thing I will say is that the addition of Bernie to that dynamic is a really good one.
I think that I mean the Pat Phelan's got to be the top. Like when with the whole of that saga there and trying to figure out what's going to happen next. That was probably when we were the most excited about Coronation Street.
And I'm really sorry that I said that Gemma and Chesney, and I really it's a shame, but.
I think that there have been periods. That was towards the beginning of Ian McLeod's tenure, wasn't it? And I think that with a few producers that have come in, there have been the early stages where we think, oh, I'm not sure, they're just finding their feet. And I think it definitely took him a little while to get the ball rolling a little bit. But then you also get things like, say, the beginning of this year with the Sarah, Adam, Lydia story, with the Gemma and Chesney Joseph story that's not particularly fun. But then usually once you get around to Britain's Got Talent week time, it kind of picks up for the rest of the year.
I will also say that I found Aidan's suicide to be incredibly stressful. I felt like I was, because you weren't involved in a lot of it, and I felt quite responsible for people's mental health, which I wasn't prepared for, and I felt like I might mess it up. And also I did not like Sinead's cancer story, and you guys know that because I never watched any of the episodes. I refused to. You
didn't watch those scenes, did you, with related to Sinead? So that was that.
And I didn't talk about it, and I don't even remember if I was in the room when you talked about it. I think I might have left.
I think you did. I think I stayed and I talked about the Sinead story while you went into the bedroom for a bit, and then you came back and talked about the other one.
I can't deal with it, I'm afraid. Nope.
So no more stories like that, please, Coronation Street. We don't enjoy it. Archie's next question, Gemma.
Do you have any rituals which you do before or during the podcast? We know Gemma likes a cider. E.g., do you have to sit a specific way round, like ant and deck?
Yes, we absolutely do.
Well, in this sofa, we sit... I'm on the left and Michael's on the right, but in our old house,
the ant and Gemma's the deck.
Michael was on the other side.
Yeah, we've completely swapped round sides that we sit.
And it's because when we moved here, we recorded in the bedroom and I was on my side of the bed, which in this house is the left-hand side, because I like to be near the windows.
Yeah.
And Michael was on the other side, so that's why we sit on the sofa
Gemma likes
this
me to
way
sleep
round.
on the side of the bed that's next to the
Michael
door, so if an attacker comes in at night, I can defend her.
Michael always says this, but that's absolutely rubbish, because I know you'd run first. I just like to be near I like to be near the window because I like I like the cold.
Yeah.
And I know you don't like it.
No. So yeah, it'd be weird. It would definitely feel weird for us to be on the other side.
I don't know if I would care. You also have a podcasting tea that you
I do have my podcasting tea each time. You often have your cider, not always. What you?
I've got wine today.
You've got wine today because it's a special occasion. But we always get everything set up. I get a drink, ask you if you want a drink, and get everything loaded up. We have to do a little test of the microphone.
We have to test the microphone, and sometimes it doesn't work. And also, we sit down and I'm all settled in, and then I'll say, have you got a pen and a bit of paper for the quiz? Because I always forget.
And then sometimes after I forget one. Also, we do sometimes stop after street talk to have another cup of tea, don't we? Because that's always the longest stretch of the show.
Yeah.
So when that little bit of music is playing, we pause, gonna get another cup of tea, and then
we'll pause it, and Michael will go, need a cup of tea, and then he'll run away, or we dash off to the toilet or something. There we go. Was there a point where you both thought, yes, we're in this for the long haul?
I don't think so particularly. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, it just kind of evolved. We always kind of thought, well, we'll keep on going as long as people want us.
We never ever thought, oh, we'll just do it for this amount of time and see how it goes, did
no.
we? We just decided to start doing. And this is also related to Archie's next question, which is, have you ever discussed stopping the podcast? Have you ever come close? Yes, many times.
Yes.
I've threatened to quit the podcast.
She really, you know what Gemma's like. She has definitely threatened to quit, and like seriously threatened to quit a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, well, when I get really upset about, like, if somebody's really personal about something, like, and they decide to specifically call me out,
like on some of the reviews or whatever.
I find that very upsetting. And I just also, it's like, sometimes I'm like, well, I don't, like, what, you know, why would I put myself in that position?
Yeah.
But then everybody's so nice, and I feel like I couldn't let people down.
Sometimes it's, I mean, husbands and wives, spoiler alert, do have arguments sometimes, don't they? And we certainly do. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not doing the podcast anymore, and that has been bandied. I've never said that.
I don't. You'll make it sound like I manipulatively threaten you. Like you put the toilet seat up, and now I'm not going to do the podcast anymore.
No. It's not been like that. I think sometimes I've kind of suggested, like when it's felt like things were getting too much, look, should we just, get to the anniversary this year, or get to the end of the year this time, and let's leave it there. But I don't think we've ever really entertained the idea for too long, because there's always,
people asking us, where's the podcast? And you're like, oh dear.
We think that would happen, but there's always like something good for Coronation Street on the horizon, and we think, well, I wouldn't be wanting to watch Coronation Street and then not being able to do the podcast after it.
Well, I am a diva sometimes, but also like I said before about mental health issues, and I had like a really bad time, and it was like getting quite serious, and there was a point where I didn't want to get out of bed, and we had to do the podcast, and I was like, I'm not going to do it because I'm too depressed. I don't even want to get out of bed. Just leave me alone. And so we were very late doing it, but in the end we did.
Yeah, there have been sometimes days when we've like done it the next day or whatever, for whatever reasons.
But you can't. I don't know. The other time was when I was like, I'm not doing notes anymore.
Oh,
remember?
yes.
I'm like, if this is going to be my life forever, I quit because I can't deal with this.
Yeah, because we used to do it back in the day. There's been a few stages of note taking for the podcast.
And I feel really guilty about this because I have put this upon your head.
It's fine. At first, we both used to have these big diaries, didn't we? That we would handwrite our notes in. I've got no idea where they've got to now. And that lasted for a few years. And then we switched onto digital and we did an episode each, didn't we? Alternated. So I did the first one, you did the next one, and so on. And then we got to a stage where you think this is too much, this is too much. And it's like, fine, I can do all the notes.
Well, I said to you, I feel really guilty about it, but at the same time, it was, I couldn't cope with it. I'm sorry, but I just couldn't cope with it.
Yeah, which is fine. It's fine.
Well, now now everyone's going to hate me because I'm just horrible. But I'm telling the truth here. This is all. Yeah. I'm not going to answer a question lying.
There hasn't been.
I don't know why. Nobody would know the truth, would they? But like, what's the point of doing a question and answer if you're going to tell fibs?
I don't think there's ever been a time where we thought, God, Coronation Street is so bad now, I'm not enjoying talking about it, or all the storylines are just dull. This is bringing me no joy. There's not been anything quite like that, has there? Because usually when it is dull enough, we can have enough fun with it and enjoy taking the mickey out of it and stacking it off and then critically assessing it.
So I'm very sorry to reveal that. Honestly, the podcast has taught me probably lots of bad things about myself that maybe I do need to know, but not very pleasant to discover. Like, I'm not actually very resilient. I always thought I was, but maybe that's a good thing. The next question is, what's next for the podcast? Are there any features or ideas you'd like to do, but aren't sure if they'd work? One thing I want to do is we did that Inside Number 9 where we did the history of that
was for the 9th anniversary of the podcast, wasn't it?
I wanted to do something similar to that. And also I wanted to do, and I've probably mentioned this on the show before, but while we have our bonus episodes and we talk about like a character profile or something, I wanted to do that, but here's the character profile version of the Factory Fire storyline, because we've done stuff like, this is like Frank Foster's character profile, and sometimes those touch upon those elements, but we've never done storyline episodes where we just talk about a big storyline, and I think that would be really interesting because sometimes these things do crop up, like in people mention in passing. Like the biggest one would be the tram crash. What would there be? Would that be interesting? I think that'd be. Yeah. I don't know how difficult that would be.
I don't know how difficult it would be. I also don't know how much it would feel just like...
I don't do any work.
I don't know whether it would feel like it was just like a mini segment of a character profile, because it's often these storylines are based around one character, but will we be going into more detail? I don't know. But at least it's something, because I've got no ideas about what can happen next. I mean, the biggest project we've just had is doing that DVD rewatch, and that's been massive and really helpful for the podcast. But I can't say that I've got any huge ambitions for where the show's going to go next. Usually things just crop up. I think as going into the second decade, we've also said we'd like to redo some character profiles, haven't we? Particularly some of the ones where we clearly didn't know what we were talking about when we profiled characters before. But yeah, I don't know.
I also wanted to do family storylines, family episodes where we say this is the story of the Platts. This is the story of the Barlows. Yeah, I've got loads of ideas, but because I don't do the work and Michael does, if he's not impressed by my idea, he won't do the work and it will never get done. So because Michael doesn't like that idea, we're not doing it. So if anybody thinks that's a good idea, please tell Michael to do the work.
Yeah, let me know. Archie has got one more question, Gemma.
Have you ever considered guest co-hosts like the Cast versus Fans quiz? There's an appetite for fans to appear. Next time you'd raise money for a charity, maybe an auction, and someone can join you both online for street talk. I think Archie wants to be a co-host.
I know. I think he's trying to say something there.
We've had people ask us, "Can you interview me for the podcast?" We've had people say, I don't think we've had anyone specifically asked to co-host, but we've done stuff like when we did the Game of Thrones, not Thrones, where we had Georgia and Charlie on to talk. That was kind of co-hosty. But I don't know, I think it's a nice idea.
I think
I don't know whether
people probably would want to come on and do it. I think part of I do like how it's just me and you. I wouldn't want somebody to come on and do a better job than us. I think
some of our listeners are very professional and they'd be very slick. That's not the problem. The thing is, you guys, if you guys have been listening for a long time, you'll remember when one of us had COVID and we had to separate. And even then, when we were separated just by a few rooms, the dynamic changed completely because it was a remote recording and you have to pause and you don't know when the other person's talking. You talk over each other. It's very difficult when you're not in the same room to have that same, flow.
But equally, a lot of podcasts do that, and what.
Yeah, but they're not as good
with the rise of Zoom and everything, lots of them are being done. I think also, you've always said that you don't enjoy doing the interviews, which is why I end up doing them.
Too anxious.
So it may be a case for one or both of us, really, of being anxious about having somebody else there.
I'm sorry,
I think I might get a bit shy.
It would scare me a bit, and it would make me worry too much.
Yeah.
But maybe if it was a charity, I'd have to shut the hell up.
Okay, Adrian. Thank you very much, Archie. Adrian has said, my question would be, how close to the show can you get before you know too much? Like seeing the sausage being made or knowing how a magician does his tricks. Once you know how it's done or what people are really like, does it start to interfere with just sitting and watching the show?
See, this is the good question because we've seen so much more of how it gets filmed now than we ever had before in our last trip. And you know how when you first start going to university and you get on a course about something and you become completely insufferable for the first few months because you've learned that little bit of knowledge before you realise how much you actually don't know. So when we came back, I was going, oh, I bet they filmed this scene. I bet they filmed this scene this way, and I bet they did that, and I bet this was done at a separate time to the last bit. I think there was a bit of that, don't you?
Yeah,
I think it's worn off now.
I think so. I mean, I would say that. I definitely kind of, having got to know some of the cast members and seeing the sets and everything, I maybe don't buy into it as being this is an actual world, a real place with real people that I'm watching in, as much as I maybe do think about for other TV shows that I watch.
That's definitely true, yeah.
If we're watching anything else, then I don't say that so-and-so an actor there, whereas I am doing that a lot more with Coronation Street now than I ever was. So in some ways, that's kind of changed it for the worse. There's nothing really you can do about that now, and I certainly don't regret being able to have the opportunity to delve deeper behind the scenes with that.
I think the next stage would be working on the show to sort of totally ruin it for you.
Yeah, but I'd still do it.
I don't think it's ruined it for us.
It's not ruined it. It's definitely changed it though.
Yeah.
And there are some some cast members that we've had, many that we've had lovely positive interactions with. Some in very, very small cases, less so, that's maybe made us look at characters in different ways. And I think going back to the positive again, sometimes getting to know an actor or even just interviewing them has made me look at some characters that I didn't particularly enjoy that much before, and then start to like them more. We were absolutely ragging on Toya loads before we got to know Georgia Taylor, weren't we? And it wasn't just well, she's our friend now, so we're going to enjoy the character. But being able to talk to her about the character has helped me to maybe understand the character of Toya more, and I think there's been a few other characters like that. I've changed my mind about them, having been able to have that discussion.
Oh yeah, I'm also I'm very biased and easily persuaded.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've never pretended not to be. It is stupid.
Yeah,
it's not very professional. But if you're nice to me, I'm nice about your character, and I'm sorry. But I don't want anyone to think that Joe Tatine has been horrible to us, and that's not why I hate him. That's not the case at all. Although he did say he didn't go on the internet. We told him we had a podcast.
Like when I watch Coronation Street, I'm still pretty good at sort of thinking, this is a house. Like, I'm not thinking, oh, the edge of the set's just round the corner there. Or, like, when there's the Platts, I don't think, oh, there's nothing upstairs. I generally just am able to put that to the back of my mind. Are you?
I don't think so. But I don't know if it affects it probably changes the way we talk about things. I definitely think we are nicer about some things that a lot of people are mean about or dislike, and our perspective's probably wrong because ours is coming from a place of, oh, they're trying hard, their hardest.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that's not I don't know, that's too I am very biased.
Interestingly, I
never hide it. I never pretend not to be.
I can watch some of the older episodes, and even like with what's going on ITV3 at the moment, not let alone the older episodes, and I can certainly detach myself from those ones and believe that that's all real more than the modern Coronation Street. Like I don't watch Platt House back in 2001 and think that's a set or they're just reading lines or anything. I wonder whether it's just partly to do with the slickness and the HD-ness and kind of feeling more real with the production quality now. And some of the older ones, it's just got that
I know what you mean.
That veneer of TV
grittiness.
Yeah, maybe.
One thing I will say, I don't think that going behind the scenes has ruined our or interfered with our perception of the show as much as doing a podcast about the show has.
Yeah.
The fact that we do a podcast about it completely changes the way that we watch the show and talk and discuss it amongst ourselves, and we definitely don't consume it in the same way that people might.
Most people do.
Yeah.
No. So
that's changed more us watching it than being involved in watching the production ever could.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate being able to go into the sausage factory sometimes.
Well, more than anything, whether or not it affects the way I enjoy the show or not, I would hope that it makes us better at doing this show.
Yeah, I would
hope so. I don't mind at all if I don't think it's changed my enjoyment. I think I enjoy it more because I'm going, aha.
It's enjoying it in a different way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there aren't any other shows that we enjoy in quite the same way, is it?
Well, there's not another show that we watch that's like Coronation Street.
No.
Because we don't watch any other soaps. But yeah, that's the answer.
Heather is next, and she says, as your podcast fans grow, do you feel your own celebrity creeping in and a need to weigh that into the growth of the podcast? How do you balance your increasing exposure and growth with the actual show and cast and us plebs?
Yeah, plebs.
Is this a question you think about as you contemplate the next 10 years of the podcast?
Heather, you're just trying to flatter us now.
I don't think when I'm recording, I'm thinking about the audience a whole lot. I don't think about people
I'll be like,
listening.
I should not have said that.
Sometimes you think you shouldn't have said that, and sometimes you tell me that I shouldn't have said that. But I don't generally think of people listening in.
We're not celebrities.
It's literally I'm just talking to you.
It's really nice.
Yes, I absolutely do not consider myself in any way.
Not even like.
Not
the
even
bottom of the barrel.
Z-list.
Not even. The thing is, we're not even. Like the word famous is so stupid to even say. We're not even that level that we could get into being able to record normal Big Brother. You know what I mean? Like normal Big Brother, you need to like have a following of about 20,000 people on Twitter or whatever, and have your own range of blimmin' elbow softeners.
I mean, I know that we are known about in the Coronation Street community.
I would say being notorious is not the same as being a celebrity.
But even like if you think about
famously pains in the arses.
If you think about everybody who watches Coronation Street around the world, it's a drop in the pond. If you think about the Coronation Street Twitter community, yes, people know. Lots of people do know who our account is and everything. The number of listeners to the podcast has increased over the years, but not by loads and loads and loads. So yeah, I don't in any way consider myself as we use celebrity just to
We're not
use
celebrities.
Heather's word. It's not at all.
No, not even humbly. Like, not even like,
No.
oh, Heather, so sweet, but we're not celebrity. Like, no, we're not. And I like it that way, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd rather be like this. I don't really. Sometimes the idea of it scares me. I'm like thinking, oh God, I hope. No, whenever we do press, I always think, I really hope this does not lead to more people listening. I like the people that listen now. I like everybody that, most of the people that listen, write in, it's nice. The thing is, I found, this is a bit of a Gillian Michaels quote, that the more, you're popular when you have haters. And we have people that dislike what we do and perhaps have made bad comments, but we don't have people that sit around and like listen to hate us and obsess over everything they don't like about us. And I think the more popular you get, the more you attract people that do that because your success then upsets them because they don't like you. So I think I'm happy with how we are. I
think it's interesting when some of the cast members say they've heard of the podcast as well. And only a very small handful of the cast, very, very small handful of the cast actually listen. It's interesting when some people said, oh, are you from that podcast? Oh, yeah, I've heard of Coronation Street. Because the thing is, listening to a podcast is a bit of an investment, isn't it?
Especially our one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a writer on the Coronation Street blog, for example, then people involved in the show can very quickly, 5 minutes, have a quick read, and they kind of get what you're about. But you need to invest a lot more time to really get underneath our skins and know what Conversation Street is about. So there's lots of people there who know of us, but that's about as far as it goes. Yeah,
it's really sweet, Heather. I don't want to be a mean girl and say Heather, but it's really nice that you think that we have any kind of...
Although, to be fair, a couple of experiences that we've had have felt close, like when I was on the Cast versus Fans quiz in Manchester and I was on the Cast team. That's pretty cool. And going along to Millie Gibson's party a couple of weeks ago as well. That almost
if there was going to be any moments where we felt like, oh gosh, here we are, Mr. Michael and Gemma, this is the big time. It was that, and also when that lovely guy came up to us in the studio and said, "Are you?"
Yeah.
That was when, because we were walking around Media City before then, and I was saying to Michael, don't say anything too loudly, or people make any really comments, because they're going to know our voices better than they know how we look.
Yeah.
And you thought I was being nuts, but that I was proven right then, because he heard our voices and went, "Oh, it's Michael and Jeff."
That was weird. After 10 years, that's the first time that's ever happened.
Yes, but that's the only time and that's like the very only place in the world that would ever happen, in Media City or in the Coronation Street set where people would recognise.
It was nice while I was waiting outside the British Soap Awards this year, and listener Charlotte came up to me as well.
Nice.
She went there then, were you?
No,
that was nice, but no, I think it's probably.
Say I don't exist.
I think it's probably for the best that we don't think about ourselves any higher than we actually do. We literally, I feel like I'm just the same as I was back when we started, and I'm just chatting with you.
But now I don't. I really, really don't.
Next question, Gemma. It's your turn to read.
Penny says, if you weren't spending so many hours watching Corrie and recording podcasts, what would you do with your freed up time?
I really don't know.
Have a kid.
Oh gosh, yeah. So thank you very much, podcast. I don't know. Like I do, we do have our other interests and hobbies, don't we? You've got your gardening at the moment. You like a good cooking. I've got my video games. The main. It's Friday nights, isn't it? And for the past 10 years, Friday nights for us have been podcasting nights. And I don't know what we used to do on Friday nights.
People used to invite us places, Michael.
Did they? I don't think we were that sociable. I think we used to just watch Coronation Street and then maybe watch something else and then go to bed. And if it was that time of the year, we'd be watching the Big Brother eviction. And that was it for Friday nights. When I'm doing my other work, preparing for the podcast on Sunday mornings, maybe I would be having more of a lie-in. I don't know, but it's not like I don't feel like I'm depriving myself of the other things that I want to do. That's all. We're both. Well, me, I get very, very little sleep anyway. I survive on 4, 5, 6 hours sleep every night. So it's not often 4, but it can be 4 hours sleep.
Yeah, but that's stupid.
But because I am awake for an awful lot of the day, I'm still able to squeeze in everything that I feel that I want to, and because you don't have as much preparation and stuff for the podcast as I do, I think I would hope that you are as well.
Well, I think I'd like to imagine, perhaps I would perhaps I would volunteer, at the local old people's home. And maybe I would go to a charity shop and help out there, and perhaps I would go and fix up a hedgerow or rescue kittens from a sack. But actually I would just be on Reddit.
Yeah, or watching telly.
Or going on Twitter going, this is a load of crap. Or worrying about things.
It'd be very, very interesting to visit an alternative parallel dimension where the podcast never existed, and just to see what we are like.
I used to do a lot more blogging and
yeah,
stuff.
That's true, you did.
And I don't do that anymore. The thing is, I used to really be into
like food blogging.
Food and fashion and fitness blogging. But I just became more disillusioned with the idea that it was all based on consumerism. I know it sounds really like a load of crap, but I eventually realised that you can only really make money out of it if you sell crap to people who don't want to buy crap. And I just thought the planet is dying because we're buying rubbish, and I can't just sit here and say, buy these shoes. I just felt like the only way to make money out of this is to like get everybody on this treadmill of just buying things and only feeling happy when you buy things. And I'm not saying that I don't feel that I need to buy things to be happy, because I'm certainly not an enlightened Buddhist monk. But I just realised that it wasn't what I wanted to do with my spare time. So doing this, I think one of the things I like about it is I feel like, although a lot of this is one-sided, and parasocial relationships, certainly there are problematic things about them, but I do feel like I'm kind of creating a kind of atmosphere where people can feel a bit freer and talk about things that are important and a bit deep, maybe right. I would never have had the chance to do that. And I think that's a good thing to do with my life.
I think so.
It's not like great art or deep, insightful psychoanalysis of anything, but it certainly feel like it's a bit more worth doing than.
Well, it's nice to be able to look back and say this is what we have achieved.
Well, yeah, like tweeting about what I had for lunch.
I wonder whether I would have even gone on Twitter ever if it wasn't for the podcast, because I only signed up to it so that we would have a podcast account.
Well, you don't have
I could be one of these real Luddites.
You have a personal account, but you never use it.
Yeah, I remember why I set that one up. I never got onto that.
I've got a personal account because I was obsessed at a certain point with registering as my real name on things to be the first person.
Make sure nobody else does.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that we absolutely wouldn't be doing if we weren't doing the podcast is going out. Because
well, that's rubbish. I like going out.
We might. I suppose Friday nights might be a go out for dinner night some weeks.
People go, oh, should we? Do you want to come round? And you go, no, we can't. And you'll give me a look, like, oh, Gemma.
Sometimes.
Nobody asks, Michael. Do you wonder why nobody asks us anymore? It's because we say, sorry, we can't do anything on Friday night.
Oh well, I've got no regrets.
Penny, I regret it.
Richard has asked how many hours of preparation and research go into each episode, so I suppose that's more of a
Oh, Richard, let me tell you.
Me.
No, excuse me, I do the quiz, right?
You do the quiz.
Can I just tell you how long this takes?
Yes.
About an hour. I have to go on to Coropedia, and I have to go through, and I have to find all the things that happened, and I've got to click on all the bits and say, oh, what happened then? And sometimes I'm going, and sometimes it'll be like, it'll be really cryptic, like, Len and Rita discuss what happened, and they can't believe it. And then Hilda comes in with more news. Everyone's shocked, and I'm like, oh no.
Do I make a question out of that?
What was Len shocked about in 1982? The fact he was still in the show.
Yeah. I mean,
on the whole, I just want to say Coropedia is very well written, but just to say that sometimes it just follows on from the previous episode. I'm like Hilda's still having troubles with her fill in the blank.
Yeah, I think if I was to add it up, I don't know, like Saturday mornings, and that's my worst time. I do not enjoy getting up on Saturday mornings, putting it together. It varies. Sometimes it's like 5:30, sometimes it's 6:30.
That's ridiculous.
Usually I get the podcast up by sort of 7, 7:30. It used to be later, but then usually I've got other work to do, schoolwork on Saturdays. But I hate it, going writing the little blurb for it, putting it on Facebook, converting it to the blog, making a little video version. That is my most unfun part of the podcast, and that's probably 2 hours, say, on Saturday. Then if I'm doing notes for the bonus podcast or the middle section, as it was on say Sunday, that might be Some weeks, like this week, it's like, this is easy. I just need to copy and paste some questions into a document. If it's one that is research, then that might be anywhere between 2 and 4 hours then.
Yeah, just to say, you guys probably fed up with all this self-indulgent waffle about what we did and what we're saying, what we think, and listener questions. But actually, this is like a treat for Michael, because it's saving you hours and hours and hours.
Anytime I can think of a bonus podcast that requires zero preparation, I'm all for it. Okay, so then on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, we've obviously got Coronation Street to watch, which is just an extra hour, little bit of pausing here
Probably
and there.
about 10 minutes after you
maybe an hour and 10 minutes a day then. The core emojis might take me another hour in the week.
All 3 people that love core emojis are grateful for that.
All of you, yeah.
This is why I say, right, can I just interject again?
YouTube
I apologise.
covers an hour.
This is why I encourage praise for Michael whenever possible, because he works so bloody hard. And the other thing I want everyone to praise Michael for is his country song that he did in the last episode that nobody's commented on.
No, I think maybe one person.
He ad-libbed that whole thing.
On the last
Please
podcast.
Can you all praise him?
What else
honestly,
do I do?
That's what you're fueled by, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It's having something up on the fridge. What else do I do? Like getting the feedback, putting that into a document. The news, now it's been brilliant the last couple of years since Rebecca's been providing us the news, so that's been a time saver of maybe 45 minutes to an hour a week, so always thank you for that, Rebecca. I would say that on an average week it's probably about 10 hours of prep, maybe, just kind of guessing there. But it may well be vastly more, vastly less. I don't want to think about it too much, because if I did, I'd probably think, I don't want to stop doing that.
It's a part-time job for Michael.
Yeah, it is.
And then obviously you've got the recording.
Oh, God, yeah, of course.
So the recording takes 3 hours.
Yeah. 3 hours on Fridays, another couple of hours usually on Tuesdays if we're doing our bonus episode.
And then the Patreon episode, which isn't
once a month,
a big deal.
Another hour or so. But then we do have the preparation that goes into that, and that's another thing that you have to do, isn't it?
Oh.
So a jolly long time is the answer to that, Richard.
Also,
no surprises,
Michael
though.
Makes me, everybody, can you believe this? Makes me listen to the YouTube.
Oh yeah, that's another job for Gemma, isn't it? Because when we put our YouTube episodes up on Thursdays, the classic bits like, which character profile from the past are we going to do? I say, Gemma, can you listen to what we said about Ina Sharples 8 years ago?
And make sure we didn't say anything offensive or weird.
Yeah.
And like a few times I've said we can't. Like, literally can't say that. And, like, one episode, I can't even remember which one it was, where I was like, we cannot play any of this. It's all incredibly...
There's been a few that I can think of
can't believe we said any
won't
of
get
this.
a re-airing.
I'm really sorry, everybody. And also, I remember at the beginning, you used to make me listen to the whole thing in bed on a Saturday morning.
Yes, I did, didn't I? Well, back when we started and the episodes were half an hour or so, what I would do on Saturday morning is literally listen to the whole thing and do proper editing, like taking out the pauses and everything like that. But then as time went on, it usually took me twice as long to edit it as it is to listen. So the half an hour episodes would take me about an hour to edit, and then it got that the episodes were about an hour long, so it took me 2 hours to edit, and then it just got a little bit silly. So now we're kind of onto the stage where if we absolutely have to do any re-saying something, then we'll change it as we go, or you might write a little timestamp down. But the whole editing thing doesn't take very long at all, and you can probably tell from listening to it when we waffle on.
But yeah, you used to like come in, and I used to like get up really late. I don't do that anymore because
allotment.
Well, no, because the light shines in the bedroom now, and I get up at like a reasonable hour for human beings. But you used to come and wake me up on a Saturday morning, and go listen to the podcast. I used to sit there, really grumpy, like woken up, like oh, this is rubbish.
I'm like, Gemma, we got to put this up now.
Much.
Can you listen to it, please? Yeah, I can't remember how long we used to do that for. There was a good couple of hours of that, a couple of years of that, wasn't there? Where we would always listen to it before we published it.
If I was going to describe, if I was going to sum up our approach to podcasting in one word for each person, for you it would be diligent.
Yeah.
For me, it would be efficient, but in brackets is lazy.
Well, I'm more efficient now. The one thing that I remember from that has happened post the editing era. Do you remember that time? It must have been 6-7 years ago or so that I left a massive burp in the podcast. And it was instead of doing the music. I had a huge burp.
Yeah, it was
and I
you,
just
it was
completely
you.
forgot about it.
And
then the
left it
next
in.
day it was published, and then somebody put on Facebook group, what was that massive burp? And I was like, oh my gosh, how many hundreds of people have listened to this?
It was actually a satirical comment on the state of society.
I think it was one of the first episodes that we recorded after I met Georgia Taylor, and I was saying, listen to the podcast. I really think so. It was about 5 years ago. I was like, listen to the podcast, and then I had to say there isn't usually huge burps and belches in them. I'm very, very sorry.
See, that breaks down barriers, isn't it?
So quite often when I put them up, I think, I just hope that there isn't anything stupid like that in there again. And so far, so good. Touch wood, there hasn't been any other times where I've had to like completely take it down and redo something. Because,
Well, there's definitely a question about that sort of thing.
Yeah,
later.
there is. We'll come back to that one later then. Anyway, that in long-windedly asked how long a preparation of research goes into the episode.
This is going to take hours.
It's fine. Let's keep going. Pete says, still really interested in how and why you keep it all a secret from your family and friends. It must be getting harder the bigger it grows and the more you do. What ridiculous excuses do you come up with to cover your nefarious activities? Well,
Pete,
let's do the
no
why.
one cares. Literally no one cares what we do.
I think some people would.
No.
Your friends have never really been that curious, have they?
They're not interested.
I think there's been a few clues dropped unintentionally that they've not
picked up on.
If I said to
them, I kind of have this fantasy that I'll go, we can't do that because we do a podcast about Coronation Street. We've been doing it for 10 years. And everyone goes, ha ha ha. And they go, ha ha ha. And then that's it. And they don't believe us because it sounds ridiculous.
I know. Nobody really ever asked too much. Like, why are you going to Manchester again?
They're not curious at all. That's how you can
I think
tell.
I've said to my dad, we've got friends up there, which is true. And we really like it. And he's just like, you're doing another Coronation Street again. You're visiting the set again. I'm like, yeah.
Nobody cares. So they'll like say, do you want to go out for a meal on Friday? And I'll say, I can't do something on Friday. And that's it. One or two times, somebody has asked us, what is it you do? And I'll say, we have a secret hobby, or I think that's one time I said I've got a part-time job.
Really?
Yeah, but they don't believe me.
Yeah. I think the reason why we wanted to do it...
It's because we talk about them behind their backs.
Apart from that, I just don't like the idea. Because I'm such an introverted person. Like if ever I'm in a meeting at school, or if I'm just sitting in the staff room or whatever, I won't say anything because I don't like people that I know knowing what I think about things, or I think people are going to judge me by what I say, and it really kind of makes me squirm, the idea that people that I know would be listening in to me. And I think I'm quite different, in the podcast. And more talkative and stuff than I am in real life.
Yes,
I think people might be surprised. This is why I always say, like, people, like when we were at Millie's party the other week, I was saying to George, I'm not a party person. She's like, I don't get this because you're very talkative and everything.
Talk to my friends.
I don't talk to people. But so the podcast is almost like my place where I can be. It's my alter ego
Superman,
space.
aren't you?
And I think that if people I knew in real life listened to it, then I'd struggle to maintain that alter ego. But right back from the beginning, I don't know. I guess we thought that people would think it was a bit sad. I don't really know.
I would just say, Pete, I am a very secretive person. I am incredibly secretive. I don't like people, which probably sounds weird because I tell you guys stuff that I would never probably tell anybody, but it seems very remote and removed, and so that's why I want to maintain this barrier. Because I really don't tell anybody anything. Honestly,
no.
And if I thought that people knew things, I would get freaked out.
I mean, nobody...
I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's not a good trait to have, to be as secretive as I am.
Nobody in real life that we know has ever, for example, looked on the Coronation Street blog and seen pictures of us. Nobody's ever looked on any articles.
Can I just say, it really helps that they don't watch Coronation Street.
Yeah, we don't really know. We know, like, my dad's my dad's partner at the moment does watch Coronation Street, and she's kind of got him into watching it again. But I'm guessing that she doesn't go on social media or follow anything on social media because sometimes we show up on that. I'm just one day it feels like it's going to happen, but the fact that it never has happened so far is kind of making it feel
it's not going to happen.
A bit safer. When I've shown like. With this wall, this Coronation Street wall that's behind us at the moment, we haven't had very many guests in the house since we put this wall up, and we're still trying to think of what we're going to say about that. But we've had a couple of friends come over, friends that that I don't see too often, and I've just said, oh yeah, that's just a Corrie wall. Here's my Nintendo stuff this side, yeah, here's my Corrie stuff, and they've not shown enough interest to kind of hang on a minute, why are you staying so close to them? Although, I mean, a lot of them we could explain away as being, I'm just there at the gates or I'm just there at the soap awards, or I just happen to have bumped into them.
Anyone could have most of these pictures.
Yeah. So
that's an advert for the soap awards.
So we don't have to come up with ridiculous excuses, but the main one about why we keep going to Manchester so often is we really, really like it, and it is a lovely place, which is true, and we've got friends there, which is true.
I'm going to visit my friends.
Yeah.
And I have to say, and this is probably really sad, but the people that we've made friends with from doing this podcast are better friends than some of the friends I've known.
Oh my gosh,
life.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Some of my bestest friends are absolutely...
Favourite people.
And my best friends, I consider, are people who I've known from this podcast. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was the other thing I was going to say about this? We've just had to sometimes be a bit secretive. I know we've been on a couple of family holidays with your parents where we've had to do some sneaky recording after dark, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think we did the Coronation Street under cover of darkness last year for the podcast.
It's not something that I really wish we did, and it's not like I'm not proud of it. I don't think it's that funny. I don't want to be deceptive. I'm not trying to be mean or exclusionary, but I just find it very helpful to do the podcast in a frank way that makes it interesting, to separate it completely, and it also helps that I don't have that many friends and I don't see them that often, and it also helps that I work from home, and I literally I haven't seen my colleagues that I worked with probably for about 3 years now. in person, and I've worked from home my entire career, and so I don't actually have anybody that would care. Like, what do you do? Write an email to someone, go, hey, have you listened to my podcast?
I think the other thing with you is that your mum is very, very supportive, and she retweets things she reposts things on Facebook related to your work, doesn't she? And I think that if she knew that we had a podcast, she'd probably listen to it.
And she'd also be like, I was really sad to hear that you thought this. Are you okay? Or, I don't want to worry you.
No, exactly. Even I remember when my mum was dying, and I was thinking, am I going to get morbid all of a sudden? It's like, am I going to tell my mum on her deathbed about all this? And even then I couldn't bring myself to do it. It just feels like something that's very separate, as weird as it is.
We have personas that are separate, Pete. You can understand that.
Yes.
And again, this is all probably stuff that probably doesn't reflect all that well on us, admitting. But again, I'm being honest.
Oh yeah, that's what this is all about, isn't it?
Go on. The thing is, I think if you're honest, there's not going to be any nasty surprises. Nobody's going to discover anything horrible because I've said everything. Yeah. Next question, Ian. I was wondering how often you have to cut and re-record due to making a mistake, disagreeing vehemently about something, Michael making an un-PC comment that Gemma finds too much to go out.
It doesn't seem to be as much as it used to be, Ian, but it was never mega often.
Ian, sometimes it's me that says it.
I mean,
sometimes I'll come back at 3 hours later after maybe, or I text Michael at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, you know how I said that?
Yeah, that has happened actually.
You know how I said.
But even that's only once every 2 or 3 months. All
children should be drowned. But I thought about it, and I can't stand behind it.
If I'm lucky, you'll have written down a timestamp to remind yourself. And sometimes I've had to trawl through street talk. Where's this bit that Gemma says that she doesn't want me to include because of what she said? But often, if it's me, I'll get a glare when we're saying it, won't we? And you might write down a time.
You can tell. I won't say anything, but you'll see me write something down. Yeah. What did I say?
It feels like it doesn't happen as much, and I don't know whether it's because I'm getting better at not saying un-PC comments, or whether we've just got a little bit that we've cared less about doing it. I don't know, but
we never edit out us arguing, because that's part of the unique selling point of the show.
No.
We don't ever make mistakes, Ian. So where did that come from?
I think but
all of our mistakes are recorded and sent to you for your delight.
The rough and ready feel of the podcast is one of the things that we like about it so much. We wouldn't want to take out anything like that. I mean, sometimes we have to pause to go and get a drink or whatever.
Just
Try and spot the place where we've done that just recently.
I will say sometimes, and I don't want to throw you under the bus. No, I'm just saying, like, when we record, sometimes you'll say something that I find really outrageous, but it's only because you hadn't thought it through, or you haven't got that perspective that I do.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be big-headed, because I think I do have a different perspective, and I'll just argue straight out to you and say, I can't believe you just said that, because blah, blah, blah. And we leave that in because I think it helps people to also come to different conclusions. And maybe somebody's listening and going, Gemma, you're wrong, Michael is right there. Or maybe they agree with me. There's no right or wrong way to think about most of this stuff.
Yeah.
So to be challenged, and I would expect you to push back if you think I'm wrong, and you wouldn't be scared to.
No,
you have in the past.
I definitely have in the past.
But like sometimes
we've agreed to
you
disagree.
haven't thought about something.
Oh yeah, I definitely say things without thinking.
And it's
absolutely.
It's not like
I'm definitely not as good as arguing sensibly as
well,
you
I
are.
am very good at arguing, so I'm not. That's why I say I'm not always right, but because I can argue, it sounds like I am.
Yeah. But to plainly answer that question, it's probably like once every couple of months now, isn't it? When we really have to do editing. But it used to be more. We used to have a little bit of paper where we put timestamps in, and we just don't do it anymore.
Even then, I would say we still, like I said earlier, there was a whole bit that we couldn't even use on the YouTube because I was like, this is not appropriate at all. Yeah. But I also want to say too, I think, Ian, that we've become more sensuous as a society, and it's very difficult to, like, I worry constantly about being picked up for saying something wrong. And that's always playing on my mind. And I know people like to say, oh, there's no such thing as cancel culture. But there totally is, especially for people like us. We're small fry. If we said something, like, inappropriate, we would get ripped to pieces. Yeah. We already had we've already been, like, ripped to shreds on certain forums for saying things about certain people. that people said, you know, horrible things about us that are completely untrue. But that you can't ever predict what's going to offend somebody.
No.
And I've said things, and we've said things.
We both have.
That have then been incredibly offensive to people, and we had no idea. So maybe that's the reason why we don't edit as much, because I just can't predict what's going to get people's knickers in a bunch. And it's really not that important, you know. This is a podcast. It's not like, you know, it's not blimmin' Parliament, is it?
No.
Nothing we say is of consequence, and I want everyone to be. If I could have one wish, it would be that everybody can say what they think, and we can come to agreements without getting mad at each other.
Well, that's why one of the things I like about the Facebook group is because on the whole that does happen, doesn't it? And I think the fact that we're open and we have disagreements about things that doesn't really matter spills into the Facebook community.
I'm not saying that I don't get mad about things that people say, because I do, but I try to have a perspective.
Next question, I think it's probably going to be able to answer quite quickly, whether I'm not really sure, but Fiona wants to know if we could choose a catchphrase for the podcast, what it would be.
I'm sorry.
I thought it was shut up, Michael. Some podcasts do have their catchphrases.
I've been trying to come up with a catchphrase for years, Fiona. I want something we can put on a t-shirt.
The closest that we've had is the music of this episode came from podcastthemes.com.
But we don't advertise them.
No, we don't. I just like param as being our podcast word. Yeah. But even then, lots of people wouldn't get it because we don't say it enough.
Oh, what's a catchphrase?
I don't know. I think when podcasts have catchphrases or the things that they say at the end of every episode or whatever, I think I don't like it. It's a bit cheesy.
There are like a few that have all completely authentic, hilarious catchphrases that kind of got generated by accident. But most of them have just really contrived and crappy at the end. They'll say something really dumb.
Keep on cobbling.
Yeah, like, just remember, if it's all cobbles, it must be Conversation Street. See you next week.
It's right up your street. I can't stand any of that kind of stuff.
I know, we would better sell merch of it.
I know, but I think it's worth it for the
because there's two different types of
it can be cheesy in many other ways.
There's two different types of catchphrases. There's like something that we frequently say, and there's something that you use to market.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one Fiona means. I'm assuming it means a marketing catchphrase.
Yeah.
But yeah, the probably the catchphrase that gets said the most is "Shut up, Michael," and I'm really sorry. And yours is probably.
Let's move on to the next story.
Yeah.
And that's not really.
Can't put that on a t-shirt either, can you?
Not real. And mine is right. As I said recently. Since I seem to say so often.
Has anyone got any ideas?
Honestly, if you can think of anything.
And we've also tried to come up with a cool name for like people that listen to the podcast. And there isn't
rolls
one.
Off the tongue, does
there
it?
isn't one.
No. Right. Oh, God, see, I just did it. I can't help it. It's really bad. Gemma, read out Giselle's questions.
Do you have any clue why the podcast has managed to run for so long as it has? I've created podcasts but never kept one going long. Is it because of the passion for Coronation Street, or the listenership, community, or something else? Do you think there's an average listenership age, and have you ever found your youngest and oldest listener? How do you think the podcast will grow in the next 10 years?
Well, we already talked a little bit about the podcast growing in the next 10 years, and our answer was that we don't really know.
We don't have plans, we're just stupid.
It just goes on and it happens.
This is
what happens
like,
happens.
Do you have any clue why it's managed to run as long? It's because Michael's bloody minded and he will never ever quit. Yeah. Like, you've been playing The Simpsons tapped out.
Yes, that's also just over 10 years.
So much so
now.
that he's given himself an injury in his hand.
My fingers will never be the same again.
And that just goes to show you, you will never let us stop. It's because
we do have passion for Coronation Street as well.
It's because Michael does all the work. If it was down to me, we would have quit because I'm lazy.
I do feel a responsibility, and I'd hate to have all those upset people if we ever did announce we were quitting.
Of course. I don't want to let people down, but I'm realistic about myself and I'm nearly 40 now. I know myself. I am lazy.
I mean,
efficient.
A lot of podcasts that I listen to have also kept on going. Some of them I've dropped off, like the Harry Potter ones that I've listened to in the past, I think are still going, but I just wasn't as interested in it anymore. But a lot of the same ones that I listen to now, I was listening to 10 years ago. So the idea of this is the end of a podcast has never really come up for me. I know that there was the other Coronation Street podcast. Which one was it even called? Of Mice and Ken. That ran a few years, didn't they? And they stopped.
They hated us so much.
But then there was Talk of the Street still going. You got Wolford Weekly still going, and I don't know what they would say about is there going to be an end point for the podcast? On Wolford Weekly, one of the hosts I know stopped doing it, and that's when Rob joined in as a podcast. And we don't have that kind of thing. It's not like
you could get married to somebody else, couldn't you?
Yeah, you're not going to drop out and me say, well, let me find another co-host. If one of us leaves, we both stop.
Is it fair to say at this point that doing a podcast is part of what makes our marriage work?
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
Is that just incredibly tragic?
Yes, absolutely is. But I think definitely the passion for the Coronation Street and the pride of what we've been doing for the last 10 years is very helpful as well.
The thing is the fact that Coronation Street's still on, and if we watched it, we would probably be thinking, oh, we could have...
Yeah, that's very true, actually.
I think even if I did get my way in one, I've never really wanted to quit, because if I really wanted to quit, I would have quit. But
I'll remember that next time you threaten it.
If you use that against me, I'll stab you with a fork. But listen, I think that even if we did stop, we would start again. Because I think we just couldn't shut up about it.
That's absolutely true, because we'd be still watching Coronation Street, and it'd just feel
like,
wrong not to be able to talk about it.
I want to say this. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And also, I just really want to say too, the community has been amazing, and you guys know that you make it. And we said this before when we've done various bits for our 10th anniversary stuff, and we've said it is because you guys listen. You support us and you help us, and it means a lot. Like when I feel really down, I do think there are people that like me, and maybe they are right and I'm not terrible.
Yeah, well,
so that's nice.
Both of us have confidence issues when it comes to friends, I would say. and the idea that people
I can't believe two socially awkward
us
people do a podcast. What a
nice.
coincidence.
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about some of the people who I would consider personally being my best friends at the moment are people who we have got in touch with because of the podcast.
But only at the moment, so just remember you're on thin ice.
I know who they are as well.
Average listenership age, I really don't know. I would say it's probably a similar age to us.
But there is a huge range, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because we've had teenagers listen. Probably the average young listener is late teens, although we've had people in early to mid-teens listen before as well.
We don't have
We've watched
demographic.
Morgan growing up over the years.
We don't have demographic information because you probably have to pay loads of money for that.
I think we do. I just never look at it
I'm not
very
interested.
much. I can't really remember.
I don't want to know all of this stuff because I think I don't want to change the way I do things.
No, I don't want to tailor things to people because I want to carry on doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we've got people that have been listening to watching Coronation Street since the 60s and the 70s, haven't we?
So they must be like 22.
But I kind of because, like I said earlier when we were talking about the celebrity question, I don't think of people listening. I'm just talking into the microphone and talking to you. So I don't think, I'm being listened to by people in their 30s or 40s or 20s or 60s or anything like that.
Well, you can tell that we don't really think too hard about it because I said everyone who does jigsaws is old.
We did have a very, very young listener. Now, who was
Cole.
that? Yes, Cole. I'm glad you thought about Cole.
I think about Cole all the time.
Yes, who was the child of another one of our listeners, and he used to be played. We used to be played to him before he. I think I've lost track of how old Cole must be now.
I think he's probably 28.
You reckon? Right, next question is from Julie, who wants to know, would you ever consider moving to Manchester? It's an amazing city, but I'm somewhat biased. And do you know how many people listen to your early podcast episodes? Well, the second half of that question is still no. I probably knew at the time.
Low hundreds.
Yeah, probably in the. I mean, or less than that. It's probably double digits for the earlier ones.
Yeah.
I think the numbers haven't boomed as I think everybody thinks there's a lot more people that listen to it that
but can I just
do.
say, like, I think people are used to a world of celebrity podcasters where, like Joe Rogan gets millions and millions of viewers and
and YouTubers get tens of thousands of with nothing like that.
Well, but like still, if you got everybody in a room who listens to the show,
it'd be quite packed out.
It would be quite fraught when there was only one loo. For example.
If COVID was still going on, we'd all
be infected.
Have we ever considered moving to Manchester? It's something we talk about, isn't it? I don't think it's anything we'd seriously do. Although I've kind of thought, maybe do we retire there, or if we win the lottery? I think we've said if we won the lottery, we would absolutely buy a second home.
Oh, we definitely.
And an apartment in the Keys.
Oh, definitely.
Or something.
If I had enough money, even if we didn't win the lottery, if we were like diligent or whatever, I would definitely, if I ever bought a second home, it would be in Manchester.
Manchester is so lovely.
But
we've got Gemma's
I've got
family here.
my family, my mum and dad. I'm very, very close to my parents. I would never leave them or move away from them. I've stayed in Southampton my whole life.
I remember when we left university and you were very adamant about staying here, and I didn't mind because I like it here as well.
Yeah, you didn't have a choice. I was like, this is what's happening. If you can take it or leave it, but I'm staying here. See you later.
Yeah. And I've got my job here as well. Your job can go wherever.
I could go to a different country, really.
Yeah, even though you sometimes have in-person meetings and your business is based.
I have not had one for about
in Poole. You had for 3 years.
So
but I think I would.
I would as well, but I'm not going to leave.
It's not happening anytime soon.
My parents.
No. I would.
And I really also really, really love this area of the country.
Yeah.
I've not known anything different. I think there are many lovely places around the south.
Yeah. Also, it kind of ties into what I was saying.
I don't want to say there aren't nice places everywhere, but I think everybody likes. I think if you don't like where you live, just move. And I like where I live, so I'm staying.
I think if you know me, you know I'm not the sort of person that likes change. This is
hate
why we
it.
said we're never going on a podcast because this is what I do, and this is the way everything is, and nothing will ever change. And I think that's the same for living here as well. I can't actually imagine living somewhere else because I like kind of this endless now that we're in at the moment. But who knows?
That if we moved to Manchester, I would have a richer life. But I can't leave my parents. No. I do sometimes fantasize about making them move with us. I think they'd like it. I don't know, but I really do.
Would we have to explain the podcast to them then? Say, Mum and Dad, we're moving to Manchester. You're coming with us. Here's why.
Yeah, you'll love Sal. She's great.
Next question, Gemma. This is you.
Stasia says, "What's been your favourite podcast that you've done so far?"
Yeah, so
90.
No. This was me.
Oh,
this was me. This is the only This is the only question that anyone's come up with that I've had any kind of pre-thought and written a few notes about, because I want to be able to give some sort of answer to this. And back in the early days, I would always say episode 90 is my favourite podcast that we've done so far. And that was the first time that we went to see the Coronation Street tour back in the old Key Street set. And it was our first trip to Manchester. We went there, was it for a week or was it a few days? I don't even remember now. And we did the taxi tour. We went to Annie's for the first time, met Jenny McAlpine.
It was really
exciting. We went on the tour. We interviewed a tour guide.
Right
there is one right behind us. And that episode, I would always say, listen to episode 90. But since then, there's been so many other wonderful experiences
like
that maybe that
302, episode 86.
Making it up. Maybe it doesn't stand out as much. I mean, episode 250 came to mind.
Was that?
That was when we went to Manchester for the tour that Conor McIntyre gave us, and we interviewed him in person. Our only cast in person interview.
We did one in
the
the
Purple Room in ITV. And that was very, very special. And the first time we'd ever done the behind the tour scenes. We always think, how's things going to get better from here? But that really was a very, very, very special one. But apart from that, I mean, lots of podcasts do just feel the same, don't they? I mean, especially the normal Friday, Saturday ones, because it's just talking about the show. And I don't know whether there's been anything that's been like, because this happened in the show, that made it the best podcast. There's some of the big surprises that have happened, like Andy was in the basement. That was a great one to talk about. Or Andy gets shot by Phelan, and he shoots Phelan. That whenever there's something big like that, that's always good. I always remember, stuck in my head, and this wasn't a favourite one, but I always remember when Dennis Tanner went off with Gloria Price, going over being absolutely livid at the beginning of the podcast. But that's not a favourite one.
A lot of your interviews are brilliant.
Thank you.
There's been some really good ones. I really like the. I'm
glad that nobody's asked me what's your favourite interview to do, because I wouldn't want to be biased about that. I don't know whether I've got any favourite ones. I probably have. I've got some that I've enjoyed more than others, but I'm not always enjoying those.
The one I'm proud of the most is the Ghost Stories one.
So
because
good.
It's so spooky. Guys know, if you know me, you know I love spooky things. I'm so excited that it's nearly September. We're moving into spooky season. Absolutely fantastic. And the Ghost Stories were great because I think it was creative.
For anyone that hasn't heard it, do you want to just explain what we mean?
Well, we did 3, didn't we?
4,
and it was, one was Vera Lomax, one was about Ivy Tolesley, one was about the ghost of Minnie.
No, Martha,
and then I've forgotten the other one.
Was Blanche appearing.
Oh, that's right. So we just did as though they were like ghost stories set in Coronation Street as if it was real. We did
wrote
like
them.
Spooky voices.
It was the only properly scripted thing we've ever done, isn't
it?
And we wrote them in the style of a ghost story. Like, there are some who say that blah, blah. And we had some spooky music behind it. Like, I was so proud of that. And the people who don't like that sort of thing probably think it's a load of rubbish. But that was one of our most creative ones. Also creative is the Dirk character profile that always stands out in my mind. That we were able to spend a whole podcast with this fake character profile of Dirk from the factory. My
favourite thing is how long some people took to realise
that it was just an April Fool. But it was also, I mean, both of those took a long time of preparation to do, which is why I think I can't bother
it was a lot of work. Yeah.
But I was so chuffed with that, and I know that Adam enjoyed hearing those as well. So if you're new to the podcast and you want to hear some of our top work, here you go, episode 90, 250, and wherever they are, the Dirk character profile and the Corrie ghost stories. But you can on our blog, and I think lots of people forget that our blog exists sometimes. If you go along the top, you can search by topic or special episodes, and find some things that are particularly interesting to you there. I mean, I've been like some of the others, like, I enjoyed when we had Georgia and Charlie on to talk about the Game of Thrones finale, for example, and that had nothing to do with Coronation Street, but that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Right, next one. Richard says, what's been the high or low point of the podcast, and would you do anything differently if we started it again? High points, I don't know. I mean, it's
We've
probably just
spoken
the
a lot
opportunity.
about
We've talked about what things we've enjoyed, like with
going
the last
places,
question.
being allowed to look and watch filming.
Yeah, the access that we've had has been great. Getting to know some of the cast members, even being told a couple of weeks ago, "Oh, you're part of the Corrie family now," was quite special to me.
But also,
personally.
like going on seeing everybody on the Facebook group and seeing how everyone gets along and how everybody praises the community. That really means a lot to me.
It does, but that means an awful lot to me. But I'm thinking of like key specific moments, and I think just being accepted by people at Coronation Street has been lovely. And other high points have also been when we've been able to raise some money for charity for various things.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Going places. Low points have just come when
things get misinterpreted or we get into trouble for saying something.
Yeah, I mean,
or
the whole
we
thing,
cause a drama for someone.
Yeah, there's been.
I don't want people to get in trouble.
One or two dramas, or big dramas, over the years that have been very difficult for us. I just remember after we did that Ellen Taylor interview, when I did the Ellen Taylor interview, and some of the quotes were taken from that out of context and then put in the papers afterwards. That was not a nice time at all, and I felt like so bad that. What happened after that, I felt really, really bad, and I know that there have been other people involved in the show that have been upset by some of the things that we've said, and we've never ever wanted that, and that's always made us very upset to feel that we've made people upset, because we've always been light-hearted and irreverent. We don't always necessarily think that about other people who aren't as light-hearted and irreverent, or people that don't take criticism or can't just laugh it off, and they perfectly have every right not to.
That's obvious. That's honestly been the darkest thing, is to know that upset, like what we've said, upset somebody.
Yeah, that's been horrible.
That's absolutely tore my heart to pieces, and it's difficult to justify the idea that you've hurt somebody's feelings. But that's never been my intent. I always try really hard, and I feel like I can hold my head up high and say that I think on the whole, I've never done it maliciously or anything. But obviously, not everybody has the same perspective, and
no.
You can't tell somebody that they're wrong for how they feel about something.
I can never think of a time where I've said anything maliciously, but we know
There's
we've
been
offended
times where
people.
we've been so flippant and kind of silly. And you can't. The other thing is, you can't critique something and kind of couch everything. And I've been accused of being sanctimonious so many times because I've tried to avoid offending people unnecessarily. See, and there's no balance I can strike, and it's been a real bugbear. It's constantly haunted me that I can't strike a balance that makes everyone happy. And you just have to accept at the end of the day that everyone's going to be mad at you. And we had 2 reviews in a row. One of them was, "Oh, Gemma's such a sanctimonious arsehole bitch," and the other one was, "You guys aren't too serious." How can I strike a balance between being too serious and not serious enough?
Yeah.
I can't. I literally cannot please you. I'm sorry if you don't like it. Just piss off is all I can say. So that's quite a low point, and thinking that somebody's worked really hard on something and we just sit there and talk about it for 5 minutes and go, that was boring anyway. I'm sorry, that's the game that we're in, and
Fortunately, there have been a lot more highs. Awful lot more highs.
If there weren't that many highs, then we wouldn't do it anymore.
No. But we're always quite critical of ourselves and everything, so the lows often come to mind.
The lows. The thing is that when you put yourself on the line as much as we do, the lows are very personal, and they hit you exactly where it hurts, because it's a personal attack. And that's the thing that kind of, you think about Coronation Street and we say this, that and the other thing. We're never attacking the person behind the show, whereas the criticism that we get is always going to be against us as people, which is hard to take.
Yeah.
What would we do differently? Nothing.
I don't know whether I would do anything differently. I mean, there are some things.
Take better, Michael could take better notes where he doesn't save everything as.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
All of your documents are called notes.
My notes, for which has got the feedback and the news and
everything.
There are
about 700 documents that just say notes.
Well, 367, or we don't have them from the beginning, do we? But every week it's called notes, and it's not called 363 notes, 364 notes, and
Why
then
don't you start doing it now?
I don't know. It should have been a summer holiday
Do
job.
it now.
And for the notes which has got the notes about watching the programme, it's called EP notes every week. So I've got many documents all in separate folders which are numbered called EP notes. But I'd really like to be able to renumber them at some point.
But you also save everything into as
together.
text documents.
Yeah.
Why?
I just like the formatting
Silly.
of that. But I think the organisation of that I would certainly change if
Also,
I had to.
I would go back and tag. I would probably save all of the photos we've done.
Oh yes.
Tag them all.
That is a project that needs doing, because we've got everything uploaded up to your iCloud and my Google Photos and everything.
On my Flickr account.
Yeah, but I some way of being able to organise that would be very, very handy.
If I had a year off, say if there was some kind of pandemic, I would go through everything and be like, right, here's a photo. What is in the photo? Cobbles, bricks, Coronation Street, December 2012. All of those bits. Yeah. I would try to save it so we could retrieve these images well. Other thing I would do differently is not get fat so I can be in photos.
We have got photos of you doing Corrie-ish things towards the beginning of the podcast, haven't we? Although for the very first year of the podcast, do you remember, neither of us revealed our identities? And
what?
I think it was the first anniversary of the podcast.
Are you joking? No.
The first anniversary of the podcast, we had something on the Coronation Street blog. It was an article about, well done, Conversation Street is 1 year old today. And that was the first time that we showed what we looked like. And for the first year, it was a mega secret. And I don't really know why we did that. And then, we've got a couple of years of me and you together. And then in the last 5 years or so, it's just been me, hasn't it? Because you've not liked your photos.
Oh, another thing I would do differently is not ever talk about myself personally or anyone I know. Because I'm constantly terrified that somebody's going to find the podcast and hear me being a bitch about them.
You don't mean that. It's just a joke. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'd do differently. There probably is, but I think they're some of the main ones now.
Far too honest for my own good.
I would also like to have lots of lovely photos with you as well.
Oh, blah, blah, blah.
Rebecca has asked...
Photoshop a potato in.
What? Why have you gone to potato just recently? You don't look much like a potato.
Was it that episode... do you remember that episode of Red Dwarf where they did the aliens and they were upside down with their mouths? And
yeah.
That's what I
Put
think
the
I look
eyeballs
like.
on their chins. Well, let's do something about it.
Well, I'm drinking wine and it's got too many calories.
Well.
Okay, I'll
moving
get some
on.
vodka.
Rebecca, what plans do you have for the future of the podcast? And as it's common now, would you ever do a live podcast with an audience?
Rebecca, we love you. The reason that people do live podcasts is because they have millions of followers, and so it's child's play to get 1,000 people in one room.
We wouldn't be able to draw enough of a crowd, and I think it'd be when we were worried when we had the cast versus fans quiz last month, earlier this month, they're like, are we going to be able to get 10 people to do this?
I kept having nightmares.
Yeah, I don't think we would be able to fill a room. A lot of our listeners are in Canada or the US.
Also,
they're all over the country. But even
say we did... Sorry.
No, keep going.
Say we did a podcast that was like in the Lowry, right? Live. That's the only venue I can imagine us. That's massive for a start. The only reason I'm saying the Lowry is because it's near Media City, and if we could sell tickets, like 50% of the audience would be Coronation Street cast and crew who'd be sitting there with their arms folded, going, "Who do you think you are?"
Yeah.
Right. I have a question. What the hell?
See, I'd quite like to do one in this new...
I think a lot... I do think there are people who would pay money to have a go at us in person.
I think so. I'd quite like to do it in this new conference room they're building in the new extension at Media City, but I think we'd have to be... I don't think they'd let us because they were not officially endorsed.
No, we're not official. No. I mean, if I thought that anyone would come... We would love to do that. That would be a dream come true.
It would be really, really nice if we were confident that enough people would come. I don't think it would.
Nice, but it's not going to happen.
But you also get your online lives, don't you? Which we did do once.
We did one. If you guys want to know,
when was it? 2015 or so when Coronation Street did their last live episode. Yep. We did a live YouTube one. But you wouldn't want to do that at the moment, would you? Because that would mean your face appearing to the masses. But I'd love to be able to do something like that in the future if you ever get confident like that. Because this is one of the things that the pandemic has made, like more podcasts.
Yeah, it was already
You're on your way there. No, lots of podcasts or YouTube channels that have just discussions as their episodes have got kind of the Zoom kind of bit integrated into it now, and it could be quite nice. But then maybe I would be more embarrassed and shy about it.
I'm sorry, I do feel like I let you down. I'm really
no,
sorry.
No, don't. But it'd be nice to do something at some point. But I'm not gutted that we're not.
Yes, but pork scratchings are nice.
Right, our last question asker.
Hang on, what was the other bit? What do you plan to have the future of the podcast?
None. We have none.
I do have my ideas that I want to do. I would love, like in my, I would love to do proper videos. I remember having, remember when we did our tour, the sets through the ages.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I could, my wildest dream, if we won the lottery, I would actually want to create, and I don't know if ITV would let us, create a series, and it's not Coronation Street. I don't know if they might not let us, but I think ITV are a bit more protective. I would do a series of documentaries about Coronation Street. I would do, a proper, like we did that. I was really proud of the work we did for the set discussion and talking about how it changed. I would love to supplement the video with some really good visuals that we don't have access to. We can't afford to pay for the rights to put them on. Yeah. We don't have rights to sort of show clips of Coronation Street. I think the mistake we did was asking if we could, and they said no.
I mean, you get so many YouTube channels that do just upload clips.
I think because
we don't.
We're kind of,
and they get lots of views.
I think because we're very what's the word? Visual. We're on the radar now, so we can't really get away with it. No. But I would do proper documentaries, and I would also love to do a behind the scenes. How does an episode get made? I think Coronation Street. I think all soaps are dismissed, and I've said this many times. I think they don't get taken seriously. I think the technical aspects are impressive and worthy of praise. I think the creative aspects, the same thing. I would want to elevate the idea of soaps as an art form. I would spend a lot of time and money creating YouTube videos to celebrate the achievements of Coronation Street as an art form. And I would also hope to elevate other soaps in a similar way, to sort of, slap people around the face a little bit and go, stop being an arsehole. This is actually modern art. And I know people think it's stupid and laugh at it, but I said this before to many people, Charles Dickens used to be serialised in a newspaper. If Charles Dickens was around now, nobody would take him seriously. But, hundreds of years later, suddenly he's like a cultural icon. Yeah. Coronation Street is the modern version of that, and I will never ever hear any different.
Some of what you were just saying there earlier about us not having the rights or being, we don't work.
Well, this is what my boss always used to say: never ask for permission, ask for forgiveness.
I know, but I always think, well, going back to what we were talking about would the podcast ever end? One thing that would mean the podcast would have to end is if one of us got a job on Coronation Street. It would absolutely have to end there, but I think I still would, and I feel really bad for all the people saying no, don't ever get a job on the Coronation Street if that means that it would end. But I don't think I ever would actually get a job. We don't live in Manchester. There's no jobs like that are available. All the jobs that whenever I've seen jobs advertised for Coronation Street, you've all got to have had XYZ experience on other TV shows. There's literally, as far as I'm aware,
there's no job for podcasters.
There's no job that I could just walk into with the qualifications and experience that I've had now. Even though I know a lot about Coronation Street and I've got lots of experience talking about it, researching it, blah blah blah, I don't think I would get a job. But something like I'd love to work as part of the archive or on the digital team or something like that. I'm not saying I could be a script writer could I work in the press department? I don't know, but it's not possible. For various reasons, but I think I would quite like it, but that would mean the podcast would have to end.
I would not like to ever get a job on Coronation Street.
Why?
I would mess it up.
I think that I wouldn't like the idea that there would be some people who would now be my colleagues that would be thinking, who gave them a job? I don't want to be working with them.
It's not even that, it's just a skill base I don't have.
I'm sure, I bet you could.
I'm not interested.
Right.
I hate it when I say something and everyone goes, oh, yeah. I know myself. I've been me for longer than you've even known me.
That's very true.
I'm not getting a job on Coronation Street. I'm not good enough.
But I think I could.
you could. Right, John.
This is our last person, and he has given us 10 questions. I think we're going to need quick fire answers for this one because we're over an hour and a half into this already. So unless there's anything that particularly merits an extra long discussion, fine. Number one.
What was the first podcast you listened to?
I'm gonna probably, I don't remember.
How Stuff
Works. Probably a lost one.
How Stuff Works, Gillian Michaels, and Last Podcast on the Left.
I remember reading a lot about podcasts, and Nintendo sites that I used to go on and Harry Potter sites that I went on had, our latest podcast is up now. And I remember kind of scrolling past and thinking, I don't really know what that is. Why do people listen to this? But I don't know exactly which one of the one was the earliest one that I listened to. But I think it probably was a lost one because that program was... I never just listened
to one. I just, went, podcast, and then I went, that.
Lost was so much about theorising, wasn't it? So the idea that I could listen to something where people were discussing the theories of something that I was mega obsessed about probably is what got me into it at first.
And probably if you listen to the first episode, we'll say... I'm sure we say in that what we listen to.
Yeah.
And it might be different to what I just said. Number 2, does putting so much work into the podcast affect your enjoyment or appreciation of other podcasts? Nope, because I don't listen to podcasts about TV shows.
No, I mean,
I don't like them.
Even I do a little bit. I separate it. Other podcasts that I listen to that are to do with TV, which isn't very much, I feel has been kind of different. So I always kind of think, well, they seem a lot more polished than ours. Or also they're like, two people that don't share a sofa with each other when they're recording it.
Yeah, John is coming at this from an angle of perhaps we have an insight into how podcasts are made and might be sort of judgmental or think about the production of the podcast as we're listening. Nope.
No.
Because our podcast is so amateur.
I totally think our podcast is very, very amateur, and it has been. I think if we were going to change it to make it more professional sounding, we'd have probably done it by now.
I'm certainly not the sort of person who can listen to a podcast and go, the audio on this is awful.
No way.
If it's like literally sounds like somebody's in a wind tunnel on the toilet, then I might think I'm not going to bother with this. But other than that, I can't tell.
Yeah. Number 3, what equipment did you use to record episode 1, and how do you feel you've grown as broadcasters in the last 10 years? Well, for the second bit about growing as broadcasters, that kind of ties into what we were just saying. We've still stayed very, very amateur, but I suppose we have...
I would say charming and down to earth.
And we've tried to be a little bit more conscious about what we say sometimes. Feeling a little bit more confident. If you do listen to the first few episodes, which are very short, we sound like mega nervous idiots back then. And
I sound like an idiot now.
And I'm just kind of used to saying just whatever now.
Sort.
But the equipment wise, back then we had a laptop and we just used the internal microphone of the laptop.
Yeah.
And then I got a new laptop and the microphone was rubbish on that. And then we went on to using our iPhones, didn't we, to record, and then we transferred from iPhone onto the laptop.
It's honestly fine.
And it's only recently that we've in the last year or so that we've got the Mac and the microphone. I don't think it makes that much difference, to be honest.
And we've had people that know what they're talking about say it sounds fine.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me.
Yeah, but it is funny when you see and hear other people talking about podcasting and then they're with their desk with their mixers and their headphones and everything. Do you really need that?
Well, sometimes I very, very briefly stumbled upon forums and subreddits and things about podcasting, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to start a podcast. What do you think about my equipment setup? And it's like, look, do a year and then buy stuff.
Yeah.
Don't buy stuff the first thing you do, because I bet you're not going to need it in a year.
Yeah, I know. I do definitely have appreciation of some of the very, very dedicated podcasts. Like there's a Nintendo one that I listen to that is also like every week they don't stop, and it does make me kind of think, God, that is a big thing to do. But also it's one where it looks like they don't have very many notes to it. I don't know any other podcast that's quite the same as us that I can compare to.
Well,
really.
Apart from other Coronation Street, like Talk of the Street.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's similar to us, but then they also don't have the same kind of character profile bits as us, do they? But anyway.
Well, it's its own category, and there's,
Yeah, quite.
And
exactly.
The soap category is a unique thing.
Yeah.
And Talk of the Street do a really good job. And if anyone, I think you guys should listen to Talk of the Street, and they do a really great job. And they have different opinions to us. They have different perspectives, and I think it's great that we've got. I think it's great to have different voices talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I really, really do.
Number 4, do you feel your friendships with cast and interaction with crew has ever affected your judgment on a storyline or has diluted your ability to state a true opinion?
First of all, I would say that I'm proud of the fact that from the very beginning, before we ever had an interest in having this perspective, that I always said, I'm not going to talk about what people, and maybe I have messed up because I am only human, but my intention was always to not talk about people, actors as, talk about what they look like or their abilities or whatever. I try to not talk about that because I don't think it's fair.
We talk about it if somebody looks particularly nice or they've done a particularly good acting job,
I will
but
praise
we try
people.
not to criticise.
I will praise people for
good
things, but I'm not going to sit there and go, I don't like how he looks or whatever. I mean, we have made fun of Dan's haircut. Hold my hands up there, but I think that's fine because you can change your haircut if you want to.
We did have our the previous name for our Bobbins Award was named after a particular ex-cast member. Well,
we then, celebrate people for having a go. So I think that I think that I get influenced to be a bit more benevolent, but I also don't think I never will say something I don't believe. I'll never say that. I'll never say I like something I don't like. I will never praise something that I don't agree with. I might skip over saying something.
Yes, I think that's something we might skip.
But that's only because I genuinely think that I try to remember that for everything I see, a person did it. A person's created this. There is literally no need to sit there and say this specific person messed up here and there. I really try not to.
Yeah. The other thing with this as well is most of the...
I might have done a few times.
Most of the cast members and sometimes crew, not that we've talked to very many of those that we have spoken to, have told us specifically, don't feel like you have to... Please don't just now praise me for everything that I do. Be honest. People have said they've appreciated our honesty, haven't they?
The thing is about Coronation Street is that
if you think that my character storyline is rubbish, you do slag it off.
I don't think there's anything you can ever see on screen that is solely the work of one person.
No.
Very, very few examples will exist on the show where you can say this is exactly down to this one person, and I'm going to now rip it to shreds. Okay. So, from that perspective, maybe there are some characters now I know where the person might be a bit, upset or whatever that I might avoid talking about entirely. Who knows? But I'm not gonna. Yeah.
And I think
I want to say that I don't think that anybody is justified in being mad about anything we've said.
I think no. I would certainly hope not.
Well,
I think on the flip side, we have started to enjoy some characters more, having got to know some of the cast members behind them. We were definitely very down on Toya before we got to know Georgia Taylor, and I don't think that it's...
I don't remember that at all.
Baby, what's you going on about?
But that's the story.
But I honestly do
like.
Yeah, but I honestly no, it's right. Because I did like Toya in her first stint round on the program.
Carry
on. I'm trying to think.
I'm not going to ever not say what I think. I might sometimes choose not to say something, but I'm not going to lie.
I think getting, like I said earlier, being able to talk with some of the cast members who are very passionate about their characters has helped transfer some of that passion over to us, and it doesn't mean that it's not genuine when we say it.
But I also think perspective too is like, sometimes I think judgments can be very hard from casual viewers on things, and you think, well, maybe I might know why it ended up that way. And it's not, it doesn't make it any better to watch it, but it can explain things. Yeah.
The other thing, before we move on to the next question, that is kind of linked to this, is that I think it's sometimes being very close with the cast members. For the people that work on Coronation Street, sometimes they'll put things in the show that are a bit rubbish that I don't think that they think are rubbish, because they think, we're going to get this cast member to do this, and won't this be funny? Because, like, for example, I always go back to when Norris dressed up as Batman and did his Fathers for Justice. That was awful. But I think that the people behind that will probably think, this would be funny, getting Malcolm Hebden to dress up as Batman on the factory roof. So I think sometimes it can work both ways. It can help.
I mean, not that we had any real input before it happened, but like Frida's story about her like passionately defending deaf culture. I don't think it was because of any friendship, but I do think it was because of our knowledge of how the show works, that we understood that this perspective, I think, was not appreciated in the way that it was intended.
Yeah.
And I hope that sometimes we can portray that when maybe it doesn't come across.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I never dilute my opinion, but I have always, and I think this is true from the start, decided there are times at which nobody needs to know my opinion. Yeah. And I think perhaps that's the greatest learning curve of all. Do you really need to say this? Sometimes no.
John's next question is, which Corrie actor of the past do you think would have most embraced Coronation Street? Blimey.
Now, this is a really hard question because I know lots of people who I can imagine would have hated, like, I think Pat Phoenix would have hated us.
Yeah.
She would have really not liked it at all. I think Tony Warren would not have liked this show.
I don't know. I think he might have enjoyed the passion that we had for it. I mean, he was still alive in the early days of the podcast as well. You never know whether he listened to it.
Lynn Perry, I think, would have thought, God, you guys should do a bit more gossip.
I haven't actually thought about this question. This is probably one of the hardest ones.
Who would have most Corrie actor of the past?
Because the thing of the Corrie actors of the past is I don't think about them as actors so much. I think they're more about the characters.
Well,
so it's harder to say.
I can also say that because of my obsession with like very classic vintage things in general, I've always loved the era of like the 50s and the 60s. So when I'm thinking of Corrie and of yore, I kind of skip from 1980 through to 2010, and I forget that ever existed. And when I think of Coronation Street of the past, I really am thinking of like
60s and 70s.
Yeah, Hilda Ogden, Len Fairclough, Rita, all of those characters and the actors that played them.
I guess it would be any actors who were really, really passionate about the show and didn't just see it as a job and were interested in it as a programme. Which I think a lot of them, I don't know.
I also do think that it was a completely different era right at the very start, because the very early Corrie stars were superstars in a way that we can't really comprehend now. Where they were, they had their scandals, but they were kind of got buried, and they were like, it was like a very early version of Hollywood, but in the UK, you can't really comprehend how famous. Pat Phoenix.
Doris
Speed, all of them.
Yeah.
They were icons,
Yeah.
and they were also champions of the North and underrepresented people. And I think, I'm not sure.
I think the other thing that makes this question hard is for the cast members now who embrace the podcast, I wouldn't have ever said, "Oh, this cast member is definitely going to enjoy listening to the podcast." It's always a nice surprise on the rare occasions.
I don't take it for granted at all.
No, but it's always a nice surprise when on the rare occasions that an actor has said that they have listened. Like the other week when Molly Gallagher said, "Oh, she's listened to a few episodes." That came out of nowhere.
I always find it.
Thought that, but nice.
I literally, I find it very, I just go, I don't know. Is that real? Are you lying? Are you trying to flatter me? I don't. I find it endlessly incredible.
A lot of cast members as well do see it as just a job, and they don't want to necessarily be thinking about it.
That's fine.
Once they've gone home for the evening.
And I, you don't listen to the podcast. Sometimes I do. If I'm feeling a bit sad, I might sometimes listen so you can make me laugh.
Oh,
but I can totally empathise with the, I'm not gonna sit there because I'll be critical. That's a sort of personality trait rather than a professional one, don't you think?
Yeah. 6.
Has your love of Corrie been enhanced by doing the podcast?
Yes, because it's helped me to understand the history of the show.
Oh, Yes.
In that way.
I never would have ever watched episodes of Coronation Street from the 60s if we hadn't done the show for so long and had all these like stories and been talking about these characters and said, you know, we really do owe it to people to know what we're talking about. And I'm just bowled over by the treasure trove of interesting stories and episodes and great TV that we've come across from watching old episodes. And I'm not going to say that watching it in the 60s helps you understand Coronation Street of present day, because there's vanishingly little left of that early Coronation Street in the current show. Only thing that's left is, you know, the location of Weatherfield and Ken Barlow, the Eternal. But I think that it's also really helped me talk about how the show's changed over the years, about the social situations that it's depicted. I think I appreciate Coronation Street more as a tool for talking about who we are and who we want to be as people through the years. And having watched it from the early years has really helped me gain that perspective.
Yeah, I just can't think like what would it be like watching Coronation Street now if we didn't do the podcast? Would we? I mean, we would. I guess we would still watch it because I don't give up on things like that. But would we be watching it and enjoying it more? Sometimes I know we watch it. When we watch it, I think, oh, I've got to talk about this week. I'm not really enjoying it. And would I not care so much if I didn't like bits? If I didn't think I had to talk about it.
When we don't like Corrie, we do sometimes say to each other, at least this will be a funny podcast.
Very true, very true. Next one. When you record, are you picturing any of the listeners that you're chatting to, or do you just chinwag between yourselves? It's the second one.
I don't know. Sometimes I think to myself, oh, don't say that because, you know, you might offend so-and-so, or...
Maybe.
Or, like, you know, for example, I was very, very conscious of the people that contacted me about Aidan, and that helped me talk about it, perhaps in a more sensitive way, because I knew that I was talking to people who were seeing themselves in Aidan, and I wanted everyone to know that no matter how you feel or how badly you think your life might be going, that you are important, and that, you know, you're better off being around.
Yeah.
So I do, especially I think it's issues based stories.
I suppose they're the main ones, yeah.
Where I think to myself, I hope that the person that I saw on Facebook who said this affected me because I've gone through this, that, all that, I hope that when they listen to this, they understand that this, you know, Coronation Street talking about this has made us all think about you and appreciate your struggle. Maybe. That's
a very good answer. Sometimes I think if I know that there's going to be a cast member listening, sometimes if I'm talking about their character, I think it makes me think that, just to be a little bit more vacuous about the whole thing. But on the whole, I don't like to imagine people staring, listening. I still sometimes don't believe it. And when people... Because so much of like what gets posted on the Facebook group or on our feedback section is about Coronation Street rather than about Conversation Street. I always get taken by surprise sometimes when people do write comments and say, this on the podcast was great, or I didn't agree with this on the podcast, or when Gemma or Michael said such and such on the podcast, I really was laughing out loud. Sometimes it makes me go, oh, people actually listen to it, do they? That's nice.
For all I say about how criticism affects me, I don't want anyone to ever think that I just want complete and utter agreement and like some kind of weird
just disagree in a polite way.
I honestly don't. I want to hear different perspectives. I think that's what makes the show so interesting, and I don't want to sort of squash any kind of, you know, those are the feedback things we get that interest me the most, where you say, actually I think that this is true, or, you know, my perspective is different from yours because of XYZ. And I've also said many times before that how you view something is as much about you as a person as about the thing that you're viewing. And the observer affects the thing itself.
Yeah. If people are being disagreeing though, I would just hope that, I mean, if you've been listening long enough, you know what we're like, and we're not actually saying things to be horrible. We're kind of nice people, really. So
I don't know if I'm nice.
If you would like to respectfully disagree, please.
It's
please,
not
please
about
do.
like being respectful.
Don't think that we're being horrible. We just said something stupid sometimes.
Whatever. I don't want people to sort of approach me with a deferential reverence, like I'm some kind of weird dictator god or whatever. I just come with an open heart and say, you know, actually, you probably think that because of this, but my perspective is whatever. And that I kind of maintain that there's no right or wrong. It's just your life experience.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different one,
Yeah.
and we can only portray our own very limited life experience. And so if you've got something to say, you can add to this kind of tapestry of conversation that we're creating as we make this show.
Yeah. Which Corrie storyline of the past do you most wish you'd been podcasting at the time to review and talk about? Richard Hillman?
I just wish I wish we had been able to do it from the very beginning. I think it would have been so funny to have been able, like, not necessarily us,
welcome to episode 1 of Coronation Street.
Not necessarily us, but any podcast. Don't you wish that there had been some kind of like record of?
Yeah.
The only thing I have access to is old like women's magazines of the past where people have talked about, you know, welcome to William Roach's new kitchen extension, or here's you know.
Yeah.
I love all that kind of stuff. I really you know, it would have been great to have been from the start. I wonder what we'd have thought, because I also think as time moves forward, you become, I think, less judgmental and less prone to criticise something. So I wonder if we had been podcasting, what would we have thought of Hilda and Stan? What would we have thought about, you know, the story where Len gets killed off? What would we have said about them demolishing the whole side of the street? I bet you we would not have been so up on it. I bet you would have been moaning about everything. Remember when they had Ina Sharple's daughter Vera come, and she had a brain tumour and Vera didn't tell her, and what would we have said? Would we have been like, oh, she's completely right, oh, that's right, or would we have gone, oh, I really have gone off Ina now, I think she's a cow?
Yeah, I do wonder. But yeah, to answer John's question more directly, I mean, before the Pat Phelan storyline, the Richard Hillman was always one of my favourites.
I'm not trying to be...
No, I know, of course you're not.
I literally wish I could go back in time and ask, like, alternative reality Gemma, what do you think about Pat Phoenix? What do you think about, you know, the character of Elsie Tanner? Do you like, you know, this, that and the other thing? Because I can only view it through, I think, honestly, rose-tinted spectacles.
Yeah, you're right.
Would we have been watching it going, this isn't going to last? Because
we
know, when we watch the 60s, we know we're watching a show that's gone on to be 60 years into the future.
Yeah.
Would we have watched it and gone, this is never going to last? Or,
that's a really,
you know,
good
how
point.
many times have we watched this and gone, gosh, I'm worried that they're going to cancel this show. I'm a bit worried, you know, that the viewing figures have gone from 100 million to like 90 million. Oh, they're in trouble now.
I'd be interested to see. Yeah, well, with our love of the 60s and 70s episodes as well, that often comes from watching the very highlights of them as well.
Yes,
I'd be interested
exactly.
if we were watching it as it was on. Would we have thought, oh, this has been a bit slow actually at the moment, and maybe we wouldn't be so praising of them because we'd have seen everything, warts and all. Or equally, if the characters that we are kind of down on, like, you know, Dickie and Audrey Fleming, from what little we've seen of them, would we have been able to, would we like them more having seen them all the way through? I don't know. Next question from John is, the podcast has been so cathartic in so many. Has it helped you in any way in life?
That's a very good question. I think it has made me realise things about myself that maybe I don't like. It has opened my mind to different... I think you guys know I'm quite a judgmental person. I've tried to not be so judgmental, and I have realised, like I said, I've made a lot of revelations about myself. I think it's helped me to understand people from different walks of life. I've learned about so many things.
I think that's been very good. As much as we knock Coronation Street and make fun of it for having all these issues, it has been fascinating learning about all of these things that if we just watched the show, we might not have got quite so much. I remember when we started the podcast, I kind of hoped that it would get me better at talking and joining in conversations with things, but it hasn't really. I'm still very, very quiet in staff meetings, and I still don't, aren't very good at talking people socially and anything like that. So in a way, it hasn't helped me there.
I will say that one time in my job, I was invited on a podcast about my job that I did, and I was completely unfazed. I did not even think about it. I was not worried. I went in and I just recorded a podcast, and I think the people that I did it with were really surprised that I was not at all worried about a big microphone in front of my face.
That's a really good point.
I think I'm, as far as recording stuff goes, I'm totally fine with it. I still am very nervous and anxious about interviewing because I think I'm terrible at it, and I know you're really good, and so in comparison, I'm even worse than I would be normally. What else do I think? I think it's helped me to think about culture and how it's received, and how social society is reflected in modern culture, and what we say about ourselves and how true is it, and what gets recorded. And I think about that quite a lot, about what do you say about yourself, and how does that reflect actually reality, and the fact that what as a society you say about yourself is going to be how people think about you in the future. So it seems quite abstract, but in 1,000 years, if all that's left is Coronation Street, how will people in the future think we saw ourselves and what was important to us? I think about stuff like that a lot.
Yeah.
And do you have anything to say? Because I'm kind of hanging.
I'm just kind of thinking. I've just been thinking other ways, because I don't know whether I have changed too much.
I think it's helped me think about mental health and realise perhaps that I needed to, because I talked a lot before about, if you need help, you're worth it, etc., etc. And I've spoken about stuff, and it's made me realise that actually I do need to go and sort myself out, and also realising what is available in this country for people that's free and can help you.
I would say that I'd go back to talking about the whole friendship thing, the fact that I've never had very many friends, and if John's asking, has it helped you in any way in life? Yes, it has helped me not feel that I'm completely somebody who just doesn't have any friends. That's been really nice, and I think I'd hope you would agree that it's also helped in some ways our relationship, because if we weren't doing the podcast, maybe we would just be sitting and blobbed out in front of the TV every Friday night, and it's given us shared experiences, hasn't it, that have been important to us, and it's given us funny things to talk about
a lot of the topics that we've come up with.
No, so it's helped us to know each other better, I think it has. So that's been very important for me as well, I would say. And finally from John.
This is the last question.
It's the last question of the night, everybody. Number 10.
I can't believe this has been 2 hours.
What have you most learned about podcast production, curry production, and yourselves in the last 10 years? We've kind of just covered the yourselves part there.
Yeah, I suck. Is my main takeaway.
No. What have you learned about podcast production? I mean, everything and nothing, because I don't think we do podcasts in the same way as lots of other people do. We've talked about the fact that we're still almost as amateur as we were beforehand. I mean, I didn't know anything, so I didn't know about editing audio files and everything, but then I learned that pretty quickly. But we've never, I've not read up things about this is how you do a podcast, this is how you can improve your podcast. Since we got started, it's all just been, I've kind of made it up as I've gone along. I mean, things like, I suppose in some ways Photoshop skills have improved, not that that's anything to do with podcasting, but for the graphics that I've had to make for the podcast, I guess I've improved there. And curry production, I mean, you could talk forever about that, hasn't it? Because before it was just a program.
I literally knew nothing.
No, for both the Coronation Street production and the podcast production, we've known nothing. We've made it up as we've been along for the podcast production, and we've just had wells of absolutely tons, a deluge of knowledge about how Coronation Street has been produced, from the script writing process to the storylining to the filming, the direction, the way that things are done in blocks, everything.
I've learned a lot, but I also feel like I'm dangerously misinformed enough to be like, you know, perhaps an alert would be put up on Twitter if I said anything like she knows just enough to not really know what she's talking about.
You know too much.
Yeah, I think
I didn't think about how it was made before. I just watched it. I've
definitely been on a journey in the last 10 years of my life. You guys have been along for a lot of it. It's been very messy and sad, some of it. I'm really appreciative of everybody that supported us. I feel like I'm trying to get somewhere. I'm not there yet, and the podcast is definitely sort of. Yeah. I'm getting to somewhere I never would have got.
Yeah, exactly, which is lovely.
And I'm not there yet,
but we're very happy with how things have gone, and definitely proud of what we've achieved.
Yeah, so it's still like we're maybe the middle of the show.
You reckon?
And I don't want to sort of conclude it with any sort of great revelation.
We're not going to like reach podcast enlightenment and then stop and say now
we're not going to beam off to Mars or something. But I really think that it's such a cliche, but you guys have really made this such an important part of our lives over the last 10 years. Everybody who's written in and whether you agree or disagree, it's all part of an enrichment of like being a human being and learning about different perspectives, and you know, everybody is a unique story. Every life is a different story that is only can tell that tale themselves because of all the things that they've done in their lives, and being able to have a sort of brief encounter with all these different human stories as we travel through the Coronation Street show has been just a privilege, and being able to share those stories on the podcast with other people and be able to say, you know, this person thinks this person thinks that, the whole sum of your life in one email about, I thought that this story was great, or I thought this story was rubbish. It might seem inconsequential, but it really is just your mark in society.
Well, I don't think I could put it any better than that.
I don't think I've made any sense. This ties into
what I was saying earlier about when I started the podcast. I kind of hoped that I'd be able to say something as deep and as lovely and as articulate as that, and I don't think I ever could.
I'm not articulate. I need a wee.
Okay, well, we'll end the podcast there. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for all your questions.
This is the divine and the you know, the sublime and the human reality of life. You can talk about society and culture and our human experience, but also
sometimes you just need a wee. Yeah. It's been absolutely lovely doing this tonight. It's a long podcast, but thank you everybody who put their questions in. I hope you found this interesting, because this is, you know, we've not talked about Coronation Street tonight. We've talked about us and the podcast. That's what the whole idea is. It was for, and Gemma needs a wee. So with that in mind, we better go.
I'm honest. I'm just blunt and honest.
It's a good job we got 2 toilets now, so I think as soon as I press the stop on the recording, I might dash off.
Which one? I'm going to the main one.
Okay, I'll go to the toilet next time. Goodbye, everybody. See you next time. Gemma, any final words? Keep it clean.
You matter. You're important, and your story is just as interesting as anything that's in Coronation Street.